fit people think
No.
they're fucking
Yeah, no.
warriors.
Yeah,
They
what
think
I'm
they're
saying,
God's gift.
yes, those people, and they're not warriors, okay? But
But
I'm not
that's
that.
the
So
patriarchy, Smith. That's the
Yeah.
patriarchy. You are not the patriarchy. You are also a
I'm
fucking
saying I'm
aberration to the
I'm
patriarchy.
saying I am gender non-conforming, and that is
Yes, you are
easier
as
for
non-binary
women.
as it gets, Smith.
Yes, and that is easier for women to do than men. Far.
No, it's not in the span of if you have short hair, but you cannot be seen as masculine or as it is
I
as
cannot be
difficult
seen
for
as
each other.
feminist. It's so much easier for
You
women to be
want the
seen as
female
masculine.
experience to be easier so bad so that you can be a victim.
No,
and
it's
you're
easier.
not.
Don't tell me unsafe. I think it's easier in specific ways, and it's harder in specific ways, and it's probably harder in more ways. Like all the things that are good about being a woman also are double-edged swords, and they're probably worse for you than they're good for you. But if you want to be an artist, it's going to be way easier to be a woman.
Oh my God. No, it's not. Smith, we already know
No,
that men
definitely
do
no.
not consume female
Absolutely.
art. They don't read female books. They don't take women seriously.
Wait, why do you think trans women have it harder than trans men, though?
Oh my
Me?
God.
No, I'm genuinely curious.
Because of homophobia.
But
because you are seen as a gender traitor to the patriarchy. You are seen as an inferior other.
But Lav,
yeah, women that go to male
like, men
are not
have
gender
it worse
traitors.
than women. Then, like, I don't agree with you.
Men. If you've ever been in any community where there are masculine men and they adopt a dyke friend, they are congratulating the dyke friend on leaving femininity behind, because that is disgusting. Femininity is disgusting. We hate femininity. That is patriarchal. And they're saying, hell yeah, you can sit with us. Let's fuck bitches. Let's treat women like shit.
I want to have this conversation with you another time, because this is a big conversation.
But what about Elliot? What about Elliot Page? Why are so many right wingers opposed to this person, to this guy?
Well, that's a culture war thing. I still think that if Elliot Page it was vice versa. I think that they'd be getting more hate. I just think that that's they're just a celebrity that is bolstered up right now, and so in the culture war, they just had to grapple on to Elliot. But
honestly, I think I'm somewhat like going from my own perspective. But
wait. Also, Elliot did not get enough hate as fucking Dylan Mulvaney. Dylan Mulvaney is like fucking public enemy number one. Elliot Page is like doing a cakewalk comparatively.
I don't know who
I haven't compared. What was I going to say now?
I think that a lot of people who are transphobic, and this doesn't speak for everybody, there's people who are transphobic different ways, but I think a lot of people who are transphobic to trans women are acting in misandry, but that's only because they view trans women as men. It's because they don't view trans women as women.
It's mostly men. Men are the people who are killing trans women. It's homophobia. It is not misandry. I know that you want the war to be women who hate men, but it is not. The people who are killing you are men.
Well,
it's not women.
I've heard feminists claim that it's like toxic masculinity and all that stuff. I mean, we can argue about what the wording you want to use, but regardless of what you buy into, it's a thing that is observably happening. We can call it
and it is observably happening because we live in a patriarchal society in which you are an inferior other because you are divesting, you are dissenting man. You are a gender traitor. You are going into femininity, which is femininity is the evil, disgusting thing. That is the gross thing.
Yeah.
Those traits have
Doesn't this completely contradict what you
I
just said earlier, though, where you said that it's easier for men to be gender nonconforming than women to be gender nonconforming? Doesn't that completely contradict what you said earlier?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Earlier you said that it's easier for men to be seen as gender nonconforming because like men aren't Spartans anymore or whatever. But now you're saying that men who are gender nonconforming are met with like incredible vitriol because they're going against the patriarchal expectation.
Smith was making the distinction that it was much easier for women, and I said it's easier.
It's
easy for both of us.
It's easier for women to do it, yeah, for sure.
It is easy for both of us to do it.
Your claim specifically was that it is easier for men to do it. Not that it's easy for both, that it is easier for men to be gender nonconforming.
I don't think that that's true.
That's exactly what you said, yeah.
If I wear a dress, I'm gonna get so much more shit than if you wear any masculine clothes whatsoever.
Oh,
True.
sure.
Okay,
But
if I
sure.
if I sexualize myself, if I want to be slutty and I want to dress
Sure, but
slutty,
it's not. But it's from the same.
people are
Sure,
gonna
Sven.
either
But it's
assume
from the
I'm a
same.
sex predator or I'm gay, but they're not gonna treat me like I'm a slutty, sexy guy.
Sure, but
Only
you.
women are
But you.
allowed to do that, and women
Sure.
are allowed to
Yes.
desexualize themselves, but men are not allowed to sexualize themselves. Like every single way, you're not allowed to do it from male to female.
Sure, but I meant under the scale of like a patriarchy, like in which it's not like a one gender holding the other accountable. Like the reason why you can't wear a dress is because men don't want you to wear a dress, not because women don't want you to wear a dress.
No, also women don't.
Yeah, women also are like the silent upholders of patriarchy and expectations for sure.
Yeah.
Women cannot uphold patriarchy.
They
Yes,
absolutely
they
can.
They
Women
do.
that call bisexual men like F slurs and tell them that they're gay and that they won't date them and that they're disgusting because they fuck men, or calling guys sissies or pussies or crybabies because they express their feelings. Women can absolutely uphold patriarchy. What are you talking about?
I'm begging you to read Andrea
promise you that I've
Dworkin's
read more
Women on
feminist
the
literature
Right.
than you ever have.
Oh my fucking god, you're fucking annoying.
Let's have a read off. Let's listen.
Why? Because I
fucking dude, a trans person gets on to fucking nice. I don't care.
Wait, I
don't care. Like
this person
I've
isn't
read
making,
way more
this
than you
person
have.
isn't making
Okay.
a point about transness. They're making a point about gender.
Can we acknowledge
ideology.
how peaceful how peaceful this has been, even though we disagree before the fucking idiot came in and became like a fight. I don't want that to be what happens. I don't want it to be like a weird versus where you can go into brothers saying, I guarantee I've read more than you. Like fucking die. Shut up. Shut the fuck up.
It's cringe. I have one more question though.
Well, you were the one who brought up a book.
Sure.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier that there was like a theory that like the reason that trans women transition is because they're treated as like feminine men and they don't like that, and so they think that they'll be treated better as trans women. But when trans women transition, they're like undoubtedly treated worse than like feminine or gay men will ever be treated by society. So if you think that that's the reason why trans women transition, why would they do that when it's clearly not effective at that desired outcome? Like society is much more vile to trans women than like gay men or feminine men. Like, can we acknowledge this?
I don't know if you can really measure that. But I think that you're getting it from both sides, right? Whereas like women are more likely to accept gay men than they are a male woman entering their space. So I agree that you're getting it more from both sides, but I don't think that there's like I don't know how much we can measure like the vitriol. Like I think that gay men are also like violently murdered.
They have it worse. But I think that it's not like they could just choose to not like feel horrible and like hate their body and want to change their body. So like they're choosing to do something that's going to make their life worse because they've internalized something that like is going to be so strong, and like rather than just like trying to just be themselves and like just like make society adapt to you, they want to change themselves so they adapt to society. That is what I believe.
This women can uphold patriarchy is giving reverse racism is real vibes to me as a non-white person.
Yes.
I'm just like, how the fuck can you say that? I think all the people claiming that are white, which explains it. Anyways, I thought what you were saying was that women, not speaking about like necessarily people who are transitioning, but women who do not conform to their gender receive more hate. And then I think that other people were speaking about people who transition and that it's more difficult for men to transition to women than vice versa. I think there were two different things, but I agree with you. I feel like a lot of this conversation is being very much based around the West. And when we think of women in the global South and what do they experience if they do not conform and they don't get married, they don't have kids? That really needs to be part of the conversation. And I just think it's ridiculous that we have people coming here up onto the stage, sitting in their gentrified apartment, claiming that women can uphold the patriarchy when this is still happening to billions of women around the world. Like, how do you say that? I mean, that's just...
Men are also victims of the patriarchy in a bunch of ways, and just because
but they're not the primary victims, Smith. Yeah. It's not about you.
I don't agree. I don't
Okay,
agree.
go
I
to
think
my
that
country, go to my country.
gender is a relationship between two parties.
Go to my country and you're not going to be saying that. Go to the vast majority of countries in the world, the countries that have been pillaged, you will not be saying that. Go to communities that are not white, you will not be saying that anymore. That's just ridiculous. Or even European countries in Eastern Europe and Southern Europe, poorer countries that have been pillaged, you're not going to be saying that. You just won't. Like you
Right. All right.
it's
I
not
wouldn't say
true.
that. I wouldn't say that in Saudi Arabia. You're
I'm
right. I
not
wouldn't say
talking
that in
about
Saudi
even
Arabia,
Saudi
but I would
Arabia.
say that
I'm not
here.
even talking about Saudi Arabia.
Any
So,
other country, any country you're talking about, I wouldn't say it there.
which is the vast majority of the world. That's the
Okay,
vast
well, I'm
majority of
not
the
living there,
population.
so I'm talking about where I live.
Yeah, because you only care about people who look like you or people who live where you live. Okay.
No, I'm advocating for people that live where
No,
I live,
I get it.
and I want to. I can only advocate for what you want me to advocate for changing the society in India, changing Indian. I don't know shit about Indian culture.
Yes. Wait, that's what I'm doing. That's what radical feminism is. That's
Well,
what radical feminism is.
You don't care about what
Okay,
people
if
are
I was in
facing in
India,
other countries.
I would be much more of the same feminism you are because that's what they need there. But that's not what we need here. It's a totally fucking different place.
What?
You want to universalize? You want to universalize the like? So
Women, you want to universalize women's rights?
Yes, I think that's retarded.
Yes, Matt, you fucking idiot.
No, you like so yeah. You want to universalize the political advocacy that you should do in every single country is fucking
Yes,
stupid.
I think that women should stop
Well, you're
being
gonna
oppressed
fail.
and committed violence against in all of the world. Yes,
I
yes,
think
I
that
do
in the
believe
United States, I think that we have we've got a much more complicated conversation to have than in a place like India or something where women are treated like they're fifth class citizens and shit.
I don't think that anyone has yeah, I don't radical feminism is the worldly feminism. It is the only feminism that takes into account every single woman on the planet. So I don't know what your activism is called. Western men's rights activism.
You think that we should treat Americans as if they're like as if we have the same society as India?
I think you should care about people in the global South. Yes, I do.
I do care. I do care.
You just said you didn't. You said I don't know anything about it, and I don't care.
I'm advocating for changes in the country that I live in because I understand how it works here. It works different in different places. All women should be liberated. All women should not be fucking like slaves and shit. And once they're not slaves, then we have much more complicated, nuanced conversations to have, and that's the kind of conversation I'm having because that's the country I live in.
Hey, Lav.
Yeah.
There's a trans man called Brother Malcolm who's streaming and wants to join the thing. Oh, yeah, you added him.
Yeah, cool. Brother Malcolm was extremely fucking annoying.
Oh, I don't remember. I just
if Brother Malcolm promises to be a good boy and it doesn't say I've read more than you, he can be let back on.
Oh, I didn't even realize he was here.
Yeah.
I have one question that sort of goes back to the thing that was discussed with this British person about the prison system. How exactly do you think the distinction should be made based on sex assigned at birth or just based on genitalia?
I think right now it would be sex observed at birth. There's no assigned unless you're intersex. And that is not even close to being a majority of the world. But yes, your sex, I think it should be for now. That should be the standard. Once rape stops happening in this hypothetical utopia, then it can be more about like yeah I guess. But even then, I think that would also depend because some trans women still could be like a eunuch and have cut off their penis, but also like still 6'3" and still have like the bone density of a man and could easily overpower a woman. So actually no, I think that I think it should just be sex right now until we completely I think it should just be sex.
But let's say imaginary you have like someone who was born a man and who like reaches the adult height of like 5'2" and is just overall very weak in appearance basically, and decides I'm not using myself as an example right now. who then maybe at like 18 or so decides to transition over into a woman, and maybe gets like breast implants, and just looks like a typical woman, like a typical woman.
Yeah.
While on the other hand, you have maybe like someone who was born a woman, and who is like very strong, very physical, and like grows up to be 6'3", like very intimidating looking, and who then at like 18 maybe takes steroids
Yeah. So
and
what
just
I
like
fear when we get into these conversations is we're talking about like a very small amount of people who are even smaller than the amount of trans people that exist, right?
definitely.
And I just don't know. When we make laws, we talk about generalities, right? Because that's what keeps the most people safe. And yeah, I would agree that a 5'1" trans woman who is in the prison system going into a male prison looks completely like a woman would probably fucking suck. And in that case, I mean, one, don't commit crime, don't go to jail. And also, I still don't see how that's like we cannot make laws for that one person. We make laws for all people. And I think that the easiest way to do that is to sex segregate instead of gender segregate. I think that gender
Well,
segregate doesn't make a lot of sense.
well, but sometimes you make like special protection for like
Sure.
special group. For example,
Should there be a
just like for
separate
example, a
wing?
doctor, yeah, works
Sure.
on like diseases that like affect very few people, but sort of these diseases that affect very few people still need like sort of some attention. So wouldn't it be smarter, instead of saying it like instead of like making this prison assignment, making it like a general rule that's based on sex differences, that like maybe you say, okay, you have in each case you have some sort of, I don't know if it's like a judge or like someone in who works in the prison or so, like individually determines, should this person be in like a female prison, should this be in like a male prison, and I think if that was the case, you there would probably you would probably have like a bunch of um, transgender women. I mean, male born male and turn into female. You probably would have like a bunch of them in the female prison, because they are like frail, and they are like not they are not necessarily perceived to be very threatening by other women,
Sure,
but
but
they
I
would be
think that
very threatened by like
you're
men.
acting like every trans woman looks like fucking Blair White, and that's not the fucking case. Like
Oh, I
most trans
definitely know
women
it's not the
look
case.
like men. So
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree that, like, let's say, I mean, I definitely do think that, like, if someone, uh, let's say, someone looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger or something, or someone looks like Dwayne Johnson or whatever, I don't think, if someone like that said, I'm a woman now, um, they obviously shouldn't be in a female prison. I mean, that's gonna.
yes, but when we make legislation, we can't say and only the ones that actually look like women because that's completely subjective. So there's no way to make laws in which that would be a reality. Again, I think that the way to solve this problem is for people to care more about men raping each other in fucking prison and put trans women in a separate wing in the male prison until they can stop fucking raping. I just don't see how that's women's problem.
I mean, do you also agree with Germaine Greer on her takes on rape?
Uh, like that what? I think
I'm
that
not
she has
sure.
multiple
I
takes
actually,
on rape. I think she
she,
has like 3 books on rape.
yes, I think her take is basically that, like, I think rapists should get uh, 200 hours of social community work or something. She thinks basically that rape should, the sentence for rape should be lowered, basically, because her take is like, well, rape, it's more of like it's not, but she basically thinks that, like, the current system requires way too it's way too demanding for women, because the burden of proof is incredibly high and it's almost impossible to be met. So as a result, she thinks like, okay, we should just straight up believe women who make like a rape accusation. And
Do lesser sentencing.
yes, so it's like a very controversial take, but I actually find it like
Yeah,
I actually have
I
to say it's
agree.
like smarter than what I usually hear from.
With no burden of evidence, or with, I would, yes, if you cannot prove it outright, but if there's like a Brock Turner situation where someone walks in on you basically raping a woman violently in the street, I believe that you should be force castrated, because if someone shoots up someone, or someone kills someone with a gun, you take away their gun. If you are committing violence with your penis, you don't get it anymore.
I'm surprised that you wouldn't advocate the death penalty there.
Oh,
Whoa,
I don't
free surgery?
I don't advocate the death penalty ever. I'm against capital punishment.
But if you wanted to like forcefully castrate someone, then there would obviously have to be like an incredibly high burden of proof to be met.
Yeah,
And then
I think that there should be different levels to different sorts of crime, right? I don't think that, like, yeah, I think with more proof you would get a higher sentence. That's like if you can prove whether or not something is aggregated for aggravated assault, you get way less years than you do for if you planned it. So I think that I think that, yeah, depending on the crime, I think that if you are accused of rape and it goes to court, you should absolutely do the Jermaine Greer thing, in which you, get a certain amount of community service hours and service to the state, and have to pay a fine or whatever. But also, if it is cut and dry case, a Brock Turner case in which someone walks in on you raping someone in a fucking alley, yeah, you should get your dick cut off.
Well, the thing is basically if if just like one person is later found to be innocent and like sort of wrongly convicted, like it's basically
How
just
could
like
you
the
have
state.
found to be innocent if someone walked in on you raping someone? There was a rape kit, and that's a cut and dry case.
They lied.
How do you lie with?
And you were like two people lied. Like the person that was the quote unquote victim lied, and also the person that watched it lied.
Thank you.
That could happen. And you were having sex.
Yeah, it could happen, but you could also lie. I mean, murder could be an act. Like, we're talking about this extremely hypothetical situation. Like, I don't.
No,
Also,
I'm just saying,
it's your fucking. It's like a penis. You're not dying. Fucking get over it.
Why don't
be a
we
eunuch.
okay then? Well, I guess if a woman does something, like we should like remove her ovaries.
Wait.
What if a woman does?
I don't
Smith,
know.
I'm saying if you use your penis as a weapon, you don't get it anymore.
Okay,
if a woman uses her vagina as a weapon, maybe
yeah. If she uses Rapex to harm a guy, then she should have her vaginal cavity removed.
I don't. That's not.
Or she uses her fist to hit a guy, and she has her hand cut off. Same with man.
Wait, why?
No.
Why do the sex offenders get free surgery, but the trans women don't? That's weird.
I'm fucking dead. Yeah, all you have to do to get free surgery is rape someone, Rose. In my reality.
I just think like I think it's the same as like you punching someone you get your hand cut off. I think that I think that's just like for some reason you become more vitriolic and you want to like have satisfaction, and that's fine, but I think you should admit it.
Sure. Yeah, I believe in punishment out of emotion.
I don't, but you can, whatever.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe people will just stop fucking raping if you cut their dicks off, right? If you're like, oh fuck, I might get my dick cut off, then you're not gonna you're gonna be way less likely to rape someone.
That's the theory that we have for torturing criminals, but it doesn't work.
I don't think that that's true. I think that it does work to some degree. The only reason I haven't killed anyone is because I'm scared to go to jail.
So like jail sentences and like punishment is like way worse in the United States than any other place, but our crime is also like way
That's
higher.
not true. Our solitary confinement is worse, but if you've ever seen Russia or fucking North Korea, like, that's just not fucking true.
Okay. Our sentencing and shit is way worse than it is in the UK, but our crime rate's also much higher than in the UK. So,
sure, but that's also
true.
because they don't. The culture is completely different.
Yeah,
they're scared. They are scared to go to prison because they lose all of their rights. We are still expected to have some rights in the U.S.
Hi, so I just wanted to add something on the rape thing real quick.
Yes.
So, I mean, I'm pretty sure we have all seen this popular sentiment that there is no there's never a reason to rape. I mean, you even know it in prisons. So I don't think the punching analogy is nearly similar to raping.
Smith?
Punching, I don't know, just like if you use your dick to rape someone, if you use your fist to hit somebody, I just don't believe. I believe
But what's a
what
valid reason to rape? Like, there's a valid reason to kill. There's a valid reason to get
valid.
physical. No,
Yeah,
but
no,
there's a
yeah, yeah.
valid
So
reason
if
to
you punch
physically
someone,
punch someone. There's
for
always.
if you
I mean, you even know in prisons, like, for
you're not getting at the actual disagreement. Yeah, there's if you punch someone for an invalid reason would be my point. But the actual thing that we disagree with is I believe that when we have people doing heinous behavior that needs to be corrected, I think we need to correct their behavior and we shouldn't punish them to make everybody feel good about hurting somebody that did something bad. I think that the goal should be making sure the behavior never happens again. And sure, castration is one way to do that, but I think it's an incredibly inhumane way of doing it.
Right, but that would teach the lesson to, like, the male population.
Right, and I also
No,
don't think that works.
It wouldn't. That's just
Well, we can try it and figure it out.
Because
that's just
you'll always need your
and
hand for something. If you rape, I mean, there's no
I
good
know
reason
what
to
I
rape
need my hand
ever,
for.
like, ever,
I
ever,
gotta have
ever.
it
both.
would
Right, but I feel like I feel
it's
like
the same reason I am against the death penalty, because it's basically just it's basically the state committing a crime and coming up with some sort of a justification. I mean, you know that like many people who later in life are committing sex crimes, for example. For example, many people who abuse children were abused as children, and many and children who come from dysfunctional households end up creating their own dysfunctional households. They grew up with a trauma. They take a trauma and carry it on to the child, and in their mind, it's just like a natural process, And I think it's like the same way with like a state committing a crime against the individual by whether it's a death penalty or, which I think was, by the way, castration. I would consider castration a worse fate than death penalty. I would say if you were to argue
over it,
well,
you your fucking relationship with your penis. Okay.
Okay. How would you feel about having your entire clitoral apparatus removed? How would you feel about that?
I just
Genuinely,
I would honestly.
Can I just ask Lab a
so
question real quick?
You're getting off of we're going on to like a jail tangent about whatever the fucking. Let's take it back to gender and transphobia.
I was gonna say, isn't it kind of funny that we're talking about how angry we are about castration, but then again on a subject of transphobia?
We've moved on to talking about women and their feelings, and now we're talking about men and their feelings, as you do.
No, I moved it back to women. How would you feel about having your clitoral apparatus removed?
Oh my God, shut up.
But what should we do with all the teachers that are in the news consistently for molesting students that are women?
What do you?
The funny thing about all this is that, I mean, the numbers don't lie, and they're like 96 or 97% of rapes happen by men and not women. Of course, if a woman rapes children, children are a vulnerable population. I do believe any female rapist should be held accountable and should serve prison time, or just
clitoral removal.
I never brought that up. But I feel like even before we were talking about having appendages removed, you were still trying to say, even if someone walks in, how will you know? I feel like you haven't even tried to even kind of be 50-50. You haven't even made an effort to say, okay, this population should be jailed.
No,
yeah,
I didn't say how you. I did not say you're lying that I said how would you even know. I said it's possible that could be wrong.
No, but I mean, I've been listening to this conversation and throughout
clearly
this whole rape. Listen, throughout this whole rape conversation, I mean, you've just been trying to make excuses. Like, I mean, it's a hypothetical,
no,
but you're still trying to make multiple excuses.
I'm not making excuses for rape.
There was never a time where you said, okay, yeah, I feel like this population should be jailed, or I feel like this population should be, like they should have their dicks cut off. Like, every single hypothetical, like, you always have, a response to it.
Okay, so hold on, I'm muting everyone for a second. I want to get off of the punishment for rape conversation, because this is not what this is for. This is to talk about what is transphobia. This is to talk about gender. This is to talk about women's lib, gender roles, things like that. You guys can make the most beautiful punishment for rape space available, and I will happily listen to it. But that is not this one. So I will unmute everyone. If you don't want to talk about that, you can remove yourself from speaker. I do want to phase some people out that have been here for a while. It looks like there are a lot of people requesting. So I will do that. Let me remove some of you. Thank you for your time, Smith. Thank you for your time, Rose. Thank you for your time, German person. Let's see. I haven't heard too much from you guys, I don't think. So let me add Karen. Let me add brother again. Let me add. Oh God, you look like a meme account. And I'm too scared. I'm not Bubble. I'm not adding you. You called me Jewish as an insult. Not happening. Good job. Good try. Not happening. And then we got HN. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to Turf Corner. What what would you like to talk about?
Well, personally, I would say that transphobia is the fact that I haven't got a lifetime free subscription of Dior Addict lip glow oil.
Yeah. I'd say that that's pretty misogynistic also. Yeah. I'd say I do love Dior blush though. I will say.
Right. I love their couture blush. Oh, so good. And the highlights.
Yeah, it's so good. But it's like $70 for like a 3-use pan. It makes me want to kill myself. But anyway, that's gender, but that's not. Let's really hit it. Sleepy, I assume you wanted to come in here to really own me on my turfdom, brother. I assume that you also really want to come in here to own me. I'm waiting.
I'm just here listening.
Oh.
Yeah, we kind of skipped the part that I was going to talk about. If you wanted to circle back to it, we can.
I don't really want to talk about how easy it is for men to be gender. Like I don't want to talk about men.
Okay, well, what do you want to talk about? I'm chill to.
I mean, we're talking about transphobia. What would your definition be of transphobia?
I think it's going to kind of depend on like what we're talking about, because I think that it can be like if somebody says something transphobic, like denying I think that if it would fall under the categorization of like conversion therapy, so like, and that's very broad, but like if somebody is like you know you're always going to be a lady, or like you're crazy, or you're delusional, or whatever, I would say that that's like directly like transphobic. Or like if you just beat the shit out of somebody because they're trans, I would say that's transphobic, right?
Okay, so you would say that it is transphobic to talk about like biological reality.
No, to deny identity, not to talk about biological reality. If you want to say that somebody's like biologically female or biologically male, it's whatever.
Okay, so identity, what makes gender identity more special than any other identity? Because what if I identify as the smartest person in the world and very beautiful, and you have to acknowledge
well, because
that.
it's a different kind of adjective,
should that be
right?
protected?
It's a different category.
Should that be protected under legislation?
No, it's an entirely different category. In the same way that I would say like, oh, you can't be Jewish. I don't think that you meet my threshold for Jewishness, right? It's a different category.
Sure, but we're not legislating around that. Or like race. What if I identify
I mean,
as
we
black?
do legislate about religion with the protected classes. Like you can't discriminate on people based on their religion, right? And if you go to therapy and you say that you're Jewish, they can't change your religion. They can't try and talk you out of it, right?
Well, that's not. I mean, sure, but that's not protected as like it's not a hate crime if you say you're not like.
Yeah, it's not a hate crime to say
America,
like you're a biological
you can say,
female
fuck you,
or you're a biological
male. You can say fuck you and your beliefs, they're not real. You can say fuck you and your beliefs, they're not real. God doesn't exist, and that's not a crime.
And it's not a crime to say like to call me a lady or to call a trans woman a man. That's not a crime. Like, will you get shit on and like roasted and flamed on Twitter? Like, yeah, but you're not going to jail for saying that. It's not a crime.
Sure, but we also shouldn't make legislation based on the fact that that's true, right? Based on the fact that you are a man when you're not.
But what is the legislation that's being made that is like it's illegal to deny this identity, like interpersonally? If you want to talk structurally, that's fine. But if you walk up to a trans woman and you say you're a man, I don't respect you, fuck you, Gerald, get out of here. Like, are you going to go to jail or no?
So what we have right now is laws protecting gender identity. I don't even know what the fuck that means.
Well, it's in the same way that we protect religion and race, right?
That's what's happening. No.
Yeah, like you can't just discriminate on people. Like if a trans person walks into your business and you say "get out,"
no, it's not. It's not.
Right?
It's not. No, it's not discriminate. Yeah, sure, but that's you can't call anyone a slur. There's no legislation against calling someone black.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm saying that there's a difference between like identity and biological reality, right? If somebody is like a biological female, you can say like, oh, you're always a female or whatever. But if somebody comes into your work, or if you're a boss and somebody identifies as trans and say their name is Sally, but they want to go by John, and you're like, hey, Sally, my lady friend Sally, what's up, Sally, my little girl boss gatekeeper, what's going on, girl? Like that falls under a harassment clause, right? That's what that discrimination would be.
Yeah,
like that's different
yeah,
than you just saying.
And then you're a dick. So what do you think should happen to those people?
I think that if you're somebody who's in a position of power and you're discriminating against people, you should lose your ability to do that discrimination. Like if I'm a landlord and I say I don't want any T-slurs living in my building, I probably shouldn't have my building anymore.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. I think that everyone should have like job protections and housing protections. I don't think that that's unique to trans people.
Yeah, and I don't either, and that's why I'm saying that like if we're talking interpersonally, there's no like penalty for you saying like I think that you're a biological female. It is different if you have kind of power over me. Interpersonally, I think that it's transphobic if you like deny identity, but I'm not saying that there's any like legal or like criminal punishment for it. I just think that makes you a dick, right? Those are different categories.
Okay, yeah, I guess so. I guess transphobia would mean, well, phobia means like fear of, right? So like fear
No,
of
it
trans
doesn't
people.
always mean the fear of though, right? Because people who are homophobic aren't scared of gay people. They just don't like gay people.
I mean, I think they are sort of
Well,
scared
are
of gay
hydrophobic
people.
molecules scared of each other? Or do they just repel?
Yes.
No, they're not. They just repel, right?
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying, but we're talking about humans are not. I mean, they can be hydrophobic if you have rabies, but like humans, when we're talking about like a social phobia instead of like a phobic like molecular phobia, I think it's a little different.
Yeah, but the way that it's used like vernacularly is like if I say that I'm homophobic, that doesn't mean I'm like, oh my god, like this gay person's gonna come into my house and like make me look at their dick. That's so gay. I hate that. It's normally just like, ew, that's disgusting. Like I hate your lifestyle. Like you're a sinner. Have fun in hell. That's usually what that refers to. Like when we say homophobic or like xenophobic. Like I'm not scared of brown people. I just I really want to keep America pure or whatever. Like that's how the word is used, right?
Sure.
Yeah. If I can,
do you think there's a way to be transphobic without being a bigot?
No, in the same way that I don't think that you can be homophobic without being a bigot. I think that it's like if you were to say like I know like this gay guy is like a rapist or whatever, I think that's disgusting. Like I don't think that qualifies as homophobia. Some people lump those together. Or like if I said Jessica Yaniv is a piece of shit, people are like that's transphobic. It's like no, she's a rapist. She's a piece of shit, right? Like some people overlap that, but I don't.
Sure. So I think that it is bigoted to say that gay people, because like being gay is like a reality. That's like a state of being. That's not like a identity. I mean, you can identify as gay, but that's also like a state of being.
Do you think that you can be like phobic towards like somebody's religion because that's not a state of being? That's like a choice as well.
No.
You don't think that at all?
No.
Like, then why did you say that girl couldn't come in here and talk earlier because she made fun of you for being Jewish? That's not a state of being. That's your religion, right?
Yeah, I'm not going to bolster someone who is anti-Semitic on this space. I don't want to get banned.
Well, okay, but regardless, like, engage with what I'm saying. Like, do you think that it's fair for people to be able to? Is it bigoted for somebody to say, "Ew, I don't like Jews"? Is that bigoted or no? Because being Jewish isn't a state of being.
I didn't call that person.
That's what I'm asking you. I just said that's what I'm asking you. Do you think that that's bigoted for somebody to say, "Ew, I don't like Jews"? Because that's not a state of being.
Jew is different because Jews is a people. And
I'm talking about the religion specifically. If you're not ethnically Jewish.
Okay, but you can't separate. You cannot. I am ethnically Jewish.
Okay, so if somebody is just religiously Jewish, would it be fine for somebody to be like, ew, Jew? Or do you have to be ethnically Jewish because that's a state of being?
I think that Jew is more nuanced because of the way that Jews have existed
okay, I can
in the
use
world
Muslim
as a race.
Then. Do you think that it's bigoted to say, ew, all Muslims are gross?
If you say like the Muslim like gender, like if you say you're trying to, it's really hard to compare these two things.
Well, no, you said it's because it's a state of being. So I'm asking you about things that aren't states of being, like religion. Like, can you be bigoted towards certain religions because even though it's not a state of being in your opinion?
So like, but the problem is that you think that someone can be like trans and that trans is like a state of being.
I'm operating in your framework. I'm not even. I think that it's a state of being, but I'm saying for you because you don't think it's a state of being. Can you be bigoted towards things that are not states of being? Like a Muslim or like a Christian. These aren't states of being, right?
Sure,
can you be bigoted towards this?
Sure, but like that doesn't. So this is the difference: is that you can be bigoted by being like, you're a piece of shit because you're trans. You're disgusting because you're trans, and that's bigoted, right? Like that's disgusting. But if I say I don't accept you as a man because you're female, I don't believe that is bigoted. So if you say to a Muslim, I don't respect your religion, that is not bigoted. But if you say you're disgusting because you're a Muslim, that is bigoted. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but I would just fundamentally disagree. I think that like if you want to have like this weird subjective metric of like this religion is okay, this religion isn't okay, because of my like arbitrary feelings about it, like what is bigoted towards me to say it, I don't think that makes much sense. Like I would say that even like because I believe it is a state of being, but even if I throw that out the window, and I agree with you for the sake of this conversation that it is not a state of being, I think that you can still be incredibly bigoted towards things that are not like a state of being, like a religion, or you could even say like a class of people. It doesn't necessarily mean
sure, but
that, right?
I agree. What I'm saying, what I'm getting at is I don't think it is bigoted to acknowledge or to believe that sex is innate and that and that gender is not.
Well, I mean, again, I think that it could be bigoted in the sense where if we say that we can like not discriminate against, but like be bigoted towards people because their state of being is not like a state of being in your words, right? Like I think that you can still be a bigot towards that because you asked me like, can I be bigoted towards things that are not a state of being? And I think that you can be. So that's where that disagreement is, right?
Sure, I guess we got a little caught up in semantics, and the hypothetical went so far that we kind of forgot that we were talking about using it in the scope of gender and sex relations.
I just want to know real quick, like what makes homosexual being like an actual state of being versus like trans?
No, so you can be trans, but you can't transition from sex to sex. So it's not like you can be transitioning in that you are taking hormones, but you can't be transitioning as like you can't really transition from male to female, right? So it's like it's not the same thing as being a homosexual, in which the definition of homosexual is you are a male having sex with a man.
Really quickly, I don't want to cut you off because I was just talking for a second, but I want to say that the way that if we classify sex on things other than just gonads, which is how most people will classify sex, if you have somebody, it's like the ship of Theseus, essentially. If you have somebody who is biologically male, they don't have testicles, they don't have a dick, their dominant hormone in their system is estrogen, they don't produce semen anymore, they have breasts, they have no facial hair, things like that. Like we could arguably say that this person does not benefit from being categorized as male anymore. I just wanted to throw that in, but I didn't mean to cut you off.
Okay, but I don't think anyone really benefits or should benefit from being categorized as anything.
Well, the benefit would be any like kind of tangible access to like medical care or like to
I don't think we categorize things because of benefits.
I mean, we do, because if I go to the doctor and I have like ovarian cancer, there's not like a biological male that's going to happen. But if I don't have ovaries and I go to the doctor and I'm like, I'm biologically female, I need you to check my ovaries. They're like, you don't fucking have any. What does that have to do with anything? Like it does offer
but that's
utility.
Not just beneficial. That's not just beneficial. That's like that's reality.
It offers utility because it's beneficial to have that kind of care.
Sure, but we also just make distinctions on things that are fucking different because they are different.
Yeah, and there would be no utility in differentiating between that if there's like substantially no difference. It's like the ship of Theseus. If you take all of the boards off of a ship and rebuild it into a different ship, is it the same ship or is it a different ship? It's more like a question of what you would categorize as sex, and a lot of people will categorize it as more than just like gonads and reproductive capacity.
Sure. I don't think I think in the rest of the animal kingdom and in the rest of the world, I know that humans think that they're gods, but the only thing that matters is that one of us pollinates the other, right?
Well, sure,
like,
but there are other animals that can
intrinsic
change
difference between us, and then everything else is a
themselves.
performance, and the performance is something that has oppressed women for centuries.
It's kind of non-tangential, but I didn't want to. Who was talking earlier? I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to throw that in real quick.
That's convenient.
I mean, it is. It doesn't really have anything to do with it.
I mean,
it's pretty convenient.
I don't think I know anybody, at least on my side of like trans weirdo Twitter, that denies the fact that biologically speaking, they're male, they're female, etc. Like in the same way that brother just said, like, oh yeah, you know, biologically female but socially male. Like I don't know.
Yes, I know, but that brings up the second part of my argument, which is that if we're going to go by gender, this is something that has only existed to oppress and subjugate women for hundreds of years. So if you are comfortable just being a male, then you can just be a feminine man. You don't have to call yourself a woman, because it doesn't mean anything when you call yourself a woman.
Yeah, but that's ignoring like the 4 or 5 different MRI studies that show that individuals with gender dysphoria.
If you're doing the sexed brain thing, I can't do it. I can't do the
Why can't you do the sex brain thing?
Because it is so just disgusting. There's just no, even if there is a sex brain, and I will in this hypothetical, even if there is a sex brain, you have to have empirical data to suggest how one sexed brain got in another sexed body. Like there's that just doesn't fucking exist.
There's
Even if there were sex
there's
brains.
so many other examples though,
Hormones
Lab.
during
There's examples
gestation.
of like second wave estrogen baths in the womb. There's Klinefelter syndrome. There's like 1,000 different reasons as to why somebody would have a brain resembling that of a natal female born into a natal male body.
Oh God, you don't even realize how sexist and misogynistic it is to say that there's a female brain. I'm like actually going to fucking
There's not really
sorry,
like
but
female
there's
or
like
male
actual
brains, but there's
examples. Like, we've
characteristics.
known this.
There's like characteristics that can be leaning more one way or the other.
You're just wrong. You are just wrong. You are just wrong. There is no male or female brain. You are just
There's
wrong.
characteristics that can skew one way or another, like lumbar elasticity
In an adult brain, when adult brains have been studied, this is what the data is. I'm writing a video essay about it. In adult brains, we see that there are dark matter and light matter in different places in adult brains, meaning that somewhat it has to do with socialization.
A lot of it's going
right?
to do with hormones.
So, like,
that's what most of the literature
man,
shows, is that it's hormones that's going to dictate those things that do have a little bit of wiggle room between gendered brains. And I don't think that gendered brains exist, but
that's not true.
It is true.
That's not true, because gay men filled with testosterone have very similar brains to women.
I'm going to send it to you right
and there's
now.
Okay, send it to me. I can send you back 30 pages of shit that says that
how
you're
do they
wrong.
have similar
this is highly
brains
contested.
to women if there's no women
all
brain?
of the current research argues
Because
that
it's
for
dark.
hormones.
It's dark and light matter. Again, we don't even know what the dark and light matter does. We just know that in adults it is similar. So then that suggests that socialization plays a key in what your brain looks like as an adult with a developed brain.
No, all of the research shows that it's hormones that dictate that. So if you have a trans woman that goes on puberty, it is. I'm sending them to you right now. I'm sending them all to you right now.
It's not true.
It is true. I'm sending them all to you right now. This is the most comprehensive one that's up to date.
That is just. I'm waiting.
I'm sending them to you on Twitter right now.
I'm waiting.
They're going through it right now. Do you not see them? This is the fourth one. Here they come. They're coming right now. There you go.
They're not. I'm waiting.
I'm showing right now that they're sent on my screen. 12:06 sent.
Oh, I do not see anything.
I'm showing my screen right now. I just sent every single one of them to you.
What do you mean you're showing your screen?
I'm streaming. I'm showing my screen right now that I just sent them all to you and that it's been sent, because I'm not making shit up.
I'm not watching.
That's fine. Stream. I'm letting you know that I did send them to you. So.
Okay. Oh, you're sending me Twitter threads.
These aren't Twitter threads, dude. What are you talking about? They're PubMed articles.
What are you? I don't even DM them.
I did. I DM'd them to you on Twitter.
How? They're not fucking showing up.
Where do you want me to send them to? Ridiculous. Do you want me to expect her to put them on a pigeon? All these articles, like this is just getting ridiculous.
All I'm saying is you can go through them at a later date if you want to. That's fine. But what it shows is that hormones are most of the things that will dictate these like ambiguous structures. Like there isn't like a brain that you can put it in an MRI and say this is a female brain. But you can look at things and say like, well, this is something that is like more similar or more akin to a female structure in the brain. But this is going to be dictated by hormones because you see these changes in post-hormonal treatment transgender people. That's the point.
Okay, I'm not seeing any of these fucking. I'm not literally. I'm
gonna send you
these articles are not in the room with us.
I'm gonna
right
send you
now.
my
They're
Discord, and then I'm gonna copy and paste it, and then just add me in Discord, and I'll send them to you on Discord then.
Okay, perfect. I think my username is PHEMOID #1111. But even if that were true, which I've read a whole book on how this is retarded. Even if that were true, you would have to empirically be able to prove.
Yeah, the mechanical keyboard going crazy right now.
Oh,
yeah. Or explain how a female brain got into a male body or a male brain got into a female body, which you cannot do without the existence of like God.
I just named you two examples.
Unfortunately, and also, what's the utility in even saying if you are a man born with a female brain, why would there be no utility in just saying it's a male brain because it's in a male body? It doesn't make a lot of fucking sense.
Because that gives you gender dysphoria.
Oh my God! Okay.
I mean, like if you had something that gave you just depression, and then it just made you want to kill yourself because the depression was so bad?
Yes, I had
Would
an
you just
eating disorder for 15 years. I thought that I should be 70 pounds.
All right, and did you kill
The
yourself?
doctors were not like, okay, we'll give you lipo.
Sounds like the doctor should probably give you some sort of treatment for that.
Yeah, and the treatment was that I did not have to be 70 pounds and that was a delusion and that I was not actually obese when I thought that I was.
So did they give you medicine to treat the distress that you were feeling?
Okay, we cannot
Or did
compare
you go through
eating
therapy
disorders
to
being
treat that?
treated
No,
to
there's no there's no medicine for anorexia.
I mean, there's medicine to help manage it for some people.
For anxiety and depression, yes, but there's no cure for anorexia.
There's no cure. There's no cure for gender dysphoria
You
either.
cannot
I
compare
never
the
said that.
two.
Sure, but it's okay. So what the problem is that you don't understand, or that what trans people don't understand, is that you are your body. You are your body.
So if you woke up in
okay?
a man's body
I
tomorrow,
know
that would
that.
just be you. You would just be a man.
I have lived my whole 25 years of experience in a female
Yeah, if you woke up
body.
tomorrow in a male body.
Of course I would feel uncomfortable if I was suddenly in another body after 25 years of having practice in a female body.
Well, yeah, but there's like a
Yes.
So
sense of
let
who
me
you are,
ask you
right?
this. If I kidnapped you and then injected you with testosterone for like 2 years, all right, and then
Yeah.
I let you back out on the streets, would you
As
stay a
society
man
has
for the
done
rest of
for
your
you.
life?
You were kidnapped as a child and they have been force feeding you testosterone
Answer the
your whole
question.
life.
You don't have to dodge.
Claire,
You are
stop
I'm
telling
telling
the
this
you.
space
question is
exactly.
ridiculous.
Claire, stop telling the space
No.
exactly what you're planning
Answer
to do
the
to me.
question.
Stop it, Claire. Our secrets are secrets, girl.
No, if someone forcibly gave me testosterone, I mean, isn't that like an antidepressant? I'd probably be chilling. I'd probably be like stoked. My depression would be
Yeah.
gone. My clit would be huge. I'd be more sensitive.
You'd
I'd
have
be
hair
like,
all over your body. Your voice would be much deeper. Your
All those lady
yeah,
curves would be
I
gone.
don't have
would
the
pop out.
narcissistic obsession of my identity and gender.
So if you
so
feel
I
like
don't
testosterone is going to make your life better, then why don't you do it? You say that misogyny is so bad. If you can
if
opt
there was
out
a
of
way
it
I
by
could
taking
take testosterone
and it makes you
to
feel
where
great,
if there was
just
a way
do
I
it.
could take testosterone and it wouldn't up my heart attack rate and my risk for like different sort of cancers, maybe I fucking
Wait, Femoid,
would.
are you saying the space isn't upping your
Have you
heart
asked
attack
about it?
rate?
Huh?
Are you saying the space isn't already upping your heart attack rate?
Yeah, honestly.
He needs the testosterone,
I mean,
babe.
why don't you
No,
go try
I
it
don't.
out?
Listen. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be able to do whatever the fuck you want. I'm just saying if you want to take estrogen, take estrogen. You're not a woman. You can take estrogen. I can take testosterone as a female, and it would not make me a male.
Yeah. And then you'd live the rest of your life being this like gross, bulky, ugly, muscly, hairy, smelly guy. And I'm sure you'd love it, right?
Why do you hate men so much?
That's really fucking funny coming from you. That's hilarious coming from you.
Yeah, it's more interesting. The self-hatred is more interesting.
You're surprised that a tranny hates herself?
I
You have
mean,
not been on Twitter.
no, I just all of this hatred seems like easily identifiable in therapy.
No, it's almost as if
hope
that
that you would go to
hatred of my own
therapy
body
because
has
you
a categorization, and I've been
But you
diagnosed with
are your
gender
body. If you hate
dysphoria.
yourself, that is not my problem. You should go to therapy to not hate yourself.
Yeah,
I
I
should
went
not
to therapy,
have to
and then they
placate
said you
you.
should
I should not
transition.
have to placate you by pretending you are a woman when you're not, so you hate yourself less. Go to therapy.
Do you think that you should have to
You
go to
don't have
therapy
to. You
for
don't have
like
to do
all kinds
anything.
of like cosmetic procedures? Like, why can't you just go to therapy and accept that you have a small ass? Like, why do you need a Brazilian butt lift or whatever?
No. If you
Yeah.
hate yourself, go to therapy. If you hate yourself and want to kill yourself if you don't change, go to fucking therapy. If you want to get a boob job and you want to do, if you're a trans person with or without dysphoria, it makes no fucking difference to me. You cannot change sex. You cannot change sex.
Or if
So do
therapy
whatever the fuck you
fails,
want with your
just
body.
go to Wendy's
Nobody
and
is
get a shake.
saying
That's a
that.
good cure.
Nobody in
Wait,
this space has ever said that we completely change sex.
hold on here.
Not a single trans person here.
So, Lav, the way
You do not become a woman. You do not become a woman because you feel like a woman. As I did not become a woman because I felt like I was a woman. I was born female, and then I
What
grew
made
up
you
into
into a
being an
woman?
adult, which made me a woman.
I
What
think
made
we're
you
There
want to be a
cannot be
confusing
woman?
expression and biology.
another philosophical argument. There cannot be more than one way of becoming a woman. because that means that we are different and you guys won't accept that.
Laugh.
Okay, so what is the biological
Have you read the
process that
WPATH
makes you into a
guidelines?
woman?
Because if somebody has like a very extreme personality disorder, some sort of disorder that like affects the way that they are seeing their body to such an extent that it messes with them. So like say that they have like say that they're like super like BPD about their body. WPATH guidelines specifically dictate that you must go through therapy to correct that and see if that will like correct the issue with your body. And I know a few people that originally thought they were trans and went through that whole process and then were just like, oh yeah, no, I have MPD, that's fine.
Okay,
So you
but what
keep
I'm saying,
saying
like,
you keep
I
saying
had an eating
go to
disorder for
therapy
over a
when
decade
that's like in the
because
actual
I
guideline.
thought that I was
We all went to
obese.
therapy already, and they told us to transition.
I know, and they
That's what you have
failed
to do.
you, and they failed you,
Oh,
and I
if
don't
it's the
believe
best
that that's
outcome,
what they
how?
Why
should do.
Why do you think that you're smarter than the World Health Organization? Are you a
I
doctor
don't think
or are
I'm
you
smarter than
porn
the World
star?
Health Organization.
Wait, I'm intersex. I don't even consider
Well,
myself
say it
trans.
The reason why we have affirmation care is because of the risk of suicide that everyone bolsters up. What if we just stopped people from fucking killing
It's not
themselves?
about
What if there was another
suicidality. It
reason?
increases quality of
Consider it.
life
Yo,
significantly. There's
what
like
if
a
we
whole
just
other
like
aspect to it.
what if we just took all the people on SSRIs and we just threw them in prison so they couldn't kill themselves? They were physically unable to do that.
Q15s,
That
let's
solves
go.
all of society's problems.
A femoid,
we
instead of everyone killing themselves, why don't you
What do you?
just kill everyone? That'd be more entertaining horror
Oh my
movie.
gosh!
Can I be the second, like, can I be like your sidekick?
Oh my god! I would never kill someone.
Okay,
Unless
but like,
no, I
what's
would
the
never kill
difference?
someone.
What's the difference between a woman as a being and a woman as an expression? Because I think a lot of y'all are talking about expression, and what the host is talking about is being a woman and being born a woman. So when you guys
I'm
say
talking about
to inject
biological women.
testosterone, I mean, obviously, if the host was born, like, if the host has lived 25 years with a male body and testosterone, I don't think they would ever question it and claim to be a female.
Do you know what I think? So, I mean, I don't make the argument. I don't make the gender identity argument. I don't make them males are women or females are men argument. But I do think that there is like genuine transphobia and a kind of like revulsion or disgust that people have towards trans people, but that's very much tied to the stigma that's attached to people who are gender non-conforming. Because if you're a person, and I would absolutely include trans people as like within the bracket of gender non-conforming people, because they are not, they are transgressing the societal expectations that one has imposed on oneself based on like patriarchal like sex roles. So I would say it's more to do with that rather than I don't think it's helpful to focus on the kind of identity or like, oh, you don't validate me or you don't see so and so as a woman or a man. I think I think that's more of an unhelpful distraction. But the reality is that trans people are not conformant to what society says a man or a woman should behave or dress or present like. And I think that's where the bigotry comes from, not because people are not validating someone as a man or a woman, but because they just don't like the fact that a male is quote unquote dressed as a woman or a female is quote unquote dressed as a man, which would also affect gender non-conforming people who don't identify as trans.
Sure,
But the
I mean,
issue
I
is an
think
expression, though. The
yeah, I
issue is
think
an expression. It's biology.
yes,
I think
that's
you
the
can dress
difference.
however you want.
Yes, exactly. That's the difference. If Claire wants to dress like what what societally women dress like, or it wants to wear a dress, wants to have long hair, wants to wear makeup, I do not care. Do your thing. I think more people should be gender nonconforming. I think that we should all be sort of like non-binary aliens doing whatever the fuck we want. I don't think that expression should be sexed or gendered. The only problem is when you think the way that you dress makes you a woman. That's fucking ridiculous.
So what
Because
makes
the
you
way
a
that I
woman?
dress, nothing I could do, no way that I could dress could make me less of a woman, right? Because I am a woman. So how would you wearing something make you more of a woman? It doesn't make
Lab, what
sense.
made you a woman?
I was born female and then I grew up to be an adult. And
But
now
when
I'm a
you put
woman.
that $75
what is the
Dior blush on,
biological process?
that's what makes you a woman, female. Not your ovary.
The biological process that turns a girl into a woman. What is it called?
Maturation? Puberty?
Congrats. Okay. Now, how is puberty actually done? What is it?
Okay, you are not a female. You are not going through a puberty. You are going through a hormonal crisis by entering by taking
Instead of
estrogen.
deflecting,
That's
you
not
can
something
answer
that
a
should
question.
be in your body.
It doesn't matter because
You're not
there are
going through a puberty. You're not becoming a woman. You're becoming a man with too much estrogen.
There are females that are not born able to produce enough estrogen for their puberty.
That's not
Are
a
they
valid
not women?
argument.
There are
That's
intersex
not a
people
valid
exist,
argument
and
because
they
it
are
counters my point.
they do intersex people do not exist to make your identity valid.
I'm not saying that.
Yes, you are. You're
No, I'm
and
not.
also
I'm
intersex people
literally
still
just
have a
trying to
primary
define
sex.
puberty
Intersex
because you
people
don't understand that it's exposure to hormones. It's
intersex people
exposure
still
to
have
sex
a
hormones.
primary sex. They are still either male or female unless you are part of the 0.0000001% where you are both. But that is not even close to being like the reality for the general population. So
Okay,
when
my
you are
God.
still either
No,
intersex
okay.
and male or female, you are still, if you, and this argument fucking pisses me off when people are like, there are women, there are females who can't get pregnant. That's because they have a disorder that affects their female reproductive system. And if the disorder was no longer afflicting their female reproductive system, they would still be capable of producing the larger gamete.
Right,
So
and
why is it
it's
okay to
like saying
make
if a blind
exceptions to
man.
the rule, right? But then you arbitrarily decide which exceptions are valid and which exceptions are not.
If I take medication that makes my skin darker, do I become black?
My small gametes are really itchy. I
Well,
need some E45
Do I
cream.
see,
become African? And if
you wouldn't become African, but I think, yeah, people would see you as black. You would operate in this world as if like you're a black person. You would have to deal with that sort of racism and discrimination.
I just don't know if that fucking holds
I think the
up.
fundamental disagreement, though, is that like the way that you're perceived is part of the problem. Is that your perception actually puts in like a lot of the oppression and the privileges that you're granted like in society, right? If you have
But
like
that's not
it is true. If you put on like a dark hoodie and you cut your hair short and you dress like a dude and you wear baggy pants and you walk down the street, a lot of the oppression that you would normally get is being seen as a woman isn't always based on biology, right? Like if you're getting catcalled, if you're getting grabbed on the train or anything like that, right?
This is so
That doesn't always relate to biology.
If someone's oh my god, if someone is a dick to me, who cares? If someone's fucking everyone deals with misogyny. My size difference, the fact that I have a vagina that a man wants to enter, the fact that there's legislation on my rights to my body, my ovaries, the fact that I am seen in religion, legislation, you know, biology throughout the past century as men's inferior other impacts my life. Even if I try to run away from it, I cannot opt out of being oppressed as a female. You cannot, even though you identify as a man, as a trans man, you cannot opt out of sex-based oppression. You cannot.
In what way? How am
You
I still
can, so
how am I
if you
still
can't
sex-based
opt out,
oppressed?
if you can't opt out, you can't opt in.
How am I still oppressed? In a female way, how am I still oppressed?
Oh my
in the
God.
medical, in like the hospital, like public exams and whatnot.
No,
there are a lot of
I
trans
don't
that.
get public exams anymore.
It
I
is
don't have
true.
a what's it called, a cervix. I don't have one of those. I don't get public exams anymore.
It's but there are plenty of trans men who do have that.
Okay,
I'm
I'm
not
asking
talking
about me. So you said that there's no way to opt out of
I
sex-based
don't know
oppression.
anything about your life. I've never seen you. I've never
I
seen
think
you in person.
That's
so
great.
I have no
The
idea
question
about
was,
you. But I'm
the
saying
statement
in general,
was,
trans men.
the statement was, is that there are people that you can escape sex-based oppression if you're female. How does that apply to people that don't have anything to be oppressed on based on their biological sex? How does that apply?
Do you have
The thing
phalloplasty?
What if I did?
Then I mean, that's still a do you not understand that that's still a surgery that exists for only females? Only females get
Phalloplasty was actually invented for cis men who got their dicks blown off in World War I. More men get phalloplasty, more cis men get phalloplasty than trans men do.
Okay, and heels
That
were
is
invented
not
for men, but now
the
women are.
vaginoplasty
right now
Yes.
you're saying
is
more
for
men
vaginal reconstruction
now
for cis
get
women.
phalloplasty than females.
Yeah, do you think that people just stopped getting their dicks blown off in wars? It's not my surgery. It was invented for cis men.
Your surgery in which you remove your cervix and
That's a
ovaries
hysterectomy.
is only given to
Okay,
females.
that's a one-time thing. How am I still being oppressed based on my female sex if I don't have to deal with that anymore?
Don't have to deal with what anymore? You are still What do you mean? You are still a person who used to have a vagina going to a
Sure,
doctor.
so I'm asking you, like,
Okay,
right
and
now,
also,
how am I still oppressed on being a female if none of that applies to me anymore?
the exception does not
I
make the
never said
rule.
anything about the
There's-
exception. I'm asking a question because the statement was that you
Okay,
cannot
but like
opt. Can I
either
finish
way,
a sentence, please? Can I
if
finish
you
my
don't,
sentence, please? The question
you
was,
kept interrupting me. So
is that can you opt out of sex-based oppression? You can, absolutely. There's no way that I'm still oppressed as being a female.
okay, the thing is with a lot of like isms and phobias and whatnot is that one person does not dictate, you know, the like everything. So just whether or not you necessarily experience sex-based oppression or not does not change the fact that majority of females oppression is based on sex.
That's fine. That's why I'm
But this
asking a
entire
clarifying
You
conversation
speaking
is
about
about
yourself, I
trans
have no idea who
people.
you are.
I
I've
also
never
think
seen
in the
you.
frame of like looking at this in like a Western way, it is like interesting because I think that like I mean, just like as like white people in the US or England, like we don't really have to worry about like most of the things that come from sex-based oppression.
In that capacity, neither
But
do you,
I
though,
know
right?
when I was living in Singapore, I was treated a lot better than I was here.
I'm from a country that like 98% of women or little girls experience FGM. So that's sex-based oppression. I think at the age of 6, you're not necessarily asked what you identify as or how, you know, like expression has nothing to do with it. It has to do with genitalia, it has to do with biology and whatnot. So
Men are famous for never having experienced genital mutilation.
And there's like specific accounts of this, right, where
male
you can say it's
circumcision. Let me
biological
tell
and
you
there's
something.
social as
Male
well.
circumcision.
There's
male
different
circumcision
categories.
and female circumcision are so wildly
They're
different.
not the same. They are absolutely not the same. I have plenty of relatives. Like I'm probably one of the only ones who hasn't experienced it, but I have plenty of like relatives who have, like I said, 98% of where I'm from experienced female genital mutilation. Male circumcision is the like extracting or like removing the foreskin. It is not the same unless a man
Okay,
unless
but
a
a lot
man
more
is
males
listen
are
real quick
circumcised than
listen
there's
real quick.
FGM, and the
Okay,
exception
real
doesn't
quick.
make
I'm
the
gonna
rule.
explain. Okay, unless a man is getting his dick cut off, it is not the same as female genital mutilation.
Yeah, it's like getting the
I don't
tip
think
of
you
your penis cut
necessarily
off.
understand how the procedure.
Doesn't sound too bad.
I don't think you understand how the procedure necessarily
Yeah.
occurs. Maybe because you're in the first world, or maybe that's all you've known. But like I'm saying, I come from a country that 90 like you can't. It affects the way you have sex. It affects childbirth. It affects intercourse. I mean, it affects the way you get your period because like they're sewing everything shut. They're cutting your clitoris. It's extremely brutal practices. Male circumcision, I'm not for male circumcision either. Like I think you guys think that I'm rooting for it or I'm not. Like I'm against mutilating children and period, but it's not on the same scale. That's basically what I'm trying to say, and that's sex-based oppression at the age of 6 or at the age of 5, 4. That is sex-based. It has nothing to do with expression. It has nothing to do with how you're perceived. It has to do with your genitals. It has to do with your biology, and the exception does not make the rule. I've seen intersex children, and I've seen women who don't have ovaries or like whatever you guys are saying, but the exception does not make the rule.
No one's saying that there isn't like biological base sex-based oppression, but a lot of it, or I shouldn't say a lot of it, but there is some that is like identity driven or identity based.
So brother, what you're saying is that you can hide from your reality. You can pass as a man, you can do all these things and you can hide from sex-based oppression. But when you admit that you are female and you acknowledge that you are female, it still exists.
I don't think that it would make sense to categorize me as female at all.
You absolutely
like you can say that I am. That doesn't bother me. I don't give a fuck what you think. But I don't think that it makes sense at all. Even in a medical capacity, there's not really any like female anything that I need. Like there isn't really like when people are, you know, nobody's looking at me down the street and they're like, man, I'd really like to fuck that vagina. Like, you know what I mean?
Every cell in your body is female.
After like years of
That's not
testosterone
even
poisoning,
true.
not really anymore.
No, every cell in your body has female chromosomes. Every cell in your body is
That's
female.
not fucking
You don't
true.
know.
Do
What
you
if
know
I had
anything
a
about
bone marrow
biology?
aspiration? That can change your chromosomes.
Do you?
What if I did?
Do you?
Maybe I have. Maybe I haven't. I'm asking you because your metric is very arbitrary.
I'm asking you, do you?
I don't know. Maybe I have. Maybe I haven't.
Okay, so you're assuming that you're a rarity of the world.
No,
and we
I'm
can't
just saying that
assume that
bone
you
marrow
are
aspirations can change your chromosomes. Yeah, for sure. And it's not just like trans people get bone marrow aspirations to change their chromosomes, but
okay, congratulations. You are the first person in the world who has changed their sex. Congratulations.
I'm not saying that at all.
Congratulations.
I'm saying that there is ways that like if you take your DNA from somebody who has a bone marrow aspiration, it can change your chromosomes.
You cannot produce a small gamete.
I can't
no
produce
matter
any
how much
fucking
you try.
gametes. That's the point. There's no utility in
Well,
classifying
you are
me as female.
capable. You are capable of
I'm-
producing the larger
I'm not
gamete.
capable at
No,
all.
he's not.
No, you are
I'm
capable.
not. I don't.
You
I
just
can't.
took out
He
of
doesn't
your
have
body what
ovaries.
made
He
you
can't
capable.
make it.
And the affliction is that you could. Yes, he
I
can.
literally
He
can't.
can make a larger
Are they gonna put
gamete.
it back?
He
How?
just
Is he
took
gonna
out
shit it
the
out?
production
Are they gonna
system
put it back?
that did it. But if you put it back, you could. That makes you
No,
female.
even
Putting it
before
back,
that,
sister,
after years of
after 1
testosterone,
month
So
your
you're
ovaries
male.
dry
So
up
you're
and shrivel
male.
up. You
So you're
after
male.
years of doing it. Yeah.
So you're male. So you're male.
If that's what you want to categorize me as, that's fine. I'm pushing back on
No.
your worldview that you can't opt out of
So you're
sex-based
female.
oppression.
If
So
it's that
are you
easy
male
to
or
put it
female?
back, then you
When
can give
I
it to
mark all of
me.
my boxes, my driver's license, my birth certificate, everything says male on it. That's how I'm legally categorized.
So
That's
is
how I
your
categorize
biology
myself.
male or female? This should be a very easy question. Is it male or
I
female?
would consider myself male, yeah.
Okay, congratulations. You were the first person to change sex in the history of the world.
Sweet. Are
Slay.
you gonna mail me a little medal?
Good for you.
Can it be made out of chocolate?
Yeah, I might. Good
Ooh,
for you.
fuck, that's awesome.
You are a medical
I like white
anomaly.
chocolate, by
Good
the
for
way,
you.
not milk
So
chocolate.
now that we are all aware of the fact that trans people do think that they can change sex, and this isn't just like a spicy one-off. Oh, the crazies on Twitter. Maybe we can actually have a conversation.
Well, it's just the ship of Theseus, like I said earlier. If you take out all the original components and
The
rebuild
ship
it in a
of
different way, is it the
Theseus.
same ship or is it a different ship? I would argue it's a different ship. Maybe you argue it's the same ship. It's like a philosophical question. If you remove all the components and replace them with something else,
You are not a boat.
do you not understand like what an analogy is,
Right.
or what like a philosophical question
He's
is?
an even more complex
A
item. He's a
human
human
body
being.
is not analogous to a fucking
The ship of
boat.
Theseus is a philosophical question about removing all the parts of something and remaking it in a different way. Is it the same thing or not?
Is being human is the act of being human? I mean, I guess you could argue that the act
I
of
mean,
being
considering
human
your
is
cells
philosophical.
regenerate entirely every like 3 years.
Okay, congrats. I have found
but that's
the transsexuals that that the pick me trannies are talking about.
I'm just asking I'm asking your opinion on it. I'm not saying answer, but I'm saying if you take the components of something and you replace it entirely, like how can you argue that it's the same thing?
Yeah, but like the human body is not the same as that because you cannot create humans and you cannot break down a
If
human
I
and
peeled
rebuild
off
a
all
human
of your
back up.
skin
Like,
and
it's
put
impossible.
alligator skin on it
Otherwise,
and pulled out your
scientists would have
fingernails
done
and
that.
put alligator claws in your finger beds,
Otherwise,
would you still
scientists would have done
categorize
that.
yourself
You
as human?
cannot. I think you can do your best to like experience a lot of the things that cis men experience or like in their bodies and whatnot. But the thing is, you can't break down a human and recreate a human. That's like literally impossible. Scientists have not gone that
They
far
can
yet.
literally do head transplants now. You can do literally anything. The transhumanist future is now. You
But
guys
you
have all been
can't.
scared
That's a
of.
lie.
That is true. It happened in Spain in 2021. They can do head transplants. Yes, they can.
Jesus
Okay,
Christ.
wait. I have a question for you, Lav.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so talking about sex-based oppression, et cetera, do you think that like I guess little personal story time. When I was a teenager, I was an extremely swishy, like gay identifying teenager. I had to skip gym for the entirety of like middle school through high school because I was consistently bullied. When I turned 18 and started going to clubs, I started getting a lot of like older creeper dudes just coming around trying to grab my ass and everything. Do you think that it's possible that for people like me who identified as gay men who are extremely effeminate, do you feel like it's possible for us to experience a type of oppression?
Yeah, I believe that feminine men suffer under a patriarchy. I don't think it's because you're women though. It's just different. Like I think most of the oppression that trans people suffer is because of homophobia. Not because of like sexism.
Yeah.
But I would
Okay.
never say
I'm an
that
example
trans
against
people
that.
have easy lives ever.
I mean, what about like the creepy guys that will ask me to suck their dick at the train station? Do you think that they're doing that because they think that I'm a man, right? Or because they think that I'm a woman?
So you really want to get caught up on why someone is being heinous to you, and I really want to talk about why Black women are still dying in childbirth, and why women are still dying in childbirth, why we are losing the rights to our bodies,
Then why is the space about transphobia?
why we have to put males in prisons because they feel like women. You want to talk about the distinction between what is homophobia and what is sexism. And I want to talk about actual, like, how, like, this is just so, it's such a silly thing to me.
All right, what do you want to talk about? Set the topic.
No, it just so it just
You want to talk about
when we're
sexism?
talking
We can
about
go to that.
weighing issues, I'm sorry, like, it's not a priority to me to find out why men are, like, hypersexualizing you and victimizing you, and where that lies in relation to Black women dying if they have male doctors. Like, there are some things that are
Okay.
just like that, like, you will never, like, you will
Then
not.
go away. The space says, what is transphobia? You don't want to talk about trans people?
No, I want to talk about trans people, but you asking whether or not, like, yeah, men are fucking heinous pigs. Like, I don't know. Men will fuck literally mattresses. I've seen porn videos of men fucking like watermelons. Like, they will mistreat anything.
Yeah,
They will do
I
anything.
saw
They
that
will abuse
Smith video
anything.
too. It was pretty nasty.
Yeah, they will abuse and fuck anything. It has nothing to do with whether or not you have a penis or not. It does not make you a woman for a man to aggress on you.
But do you think that if I looked like a man, that guy would do the same thing?
Yes, I think that men are disgusting. I think that literally if you put a hole in a mound of dirt, a man would fuck it.
I think that like men are much more likely to be like sexually aggressive towards trans people who present in a way that society would code as like feminine. But I don't.
Sure, if they think you're a woman, then you will. Sure,
Right,
absolutely.
but I don't think I don't think it's misogyny, and I wouldn't like call it that. I would call it. I mean, it's difficult to say that it's transphobia. I mean, I would just call it what it is, like sexual harassment or street harassment or sexual abuse. I don't feel like I need to call it misogyny because like a guy is being like creepy and predatory towards a male trans person or quote unquote trans woman.
Oh no, Smith wants to speak for himself. Smith, how did the watermelon feel? No, no answer, no retort.
Who, me?
Yeah, how'd the watermelon feel?
The watermelon?
Yeah.
What watermelon?
Oh no, you weren't listening. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, what H said. I don't. Listen, if you want to be the most feminine man, do your thing, slay. Do your thing. Do you think?
Look. It's not like I want to be the most feminine man. I just think that men being forced to be manly is just as horrible as women being forced to be womanly.
I agree.
So,
but wouldn't that be masculine and feminine?
In that way, men and women are both oppressed by the patriarchy.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Well, earlier you were, and someone else were like the extreme end of the rad femme argument that men are not oppressed and you can't talk about it as if they are.
Smith, you know that I have never said that and that I don't agree with that.
Well, the other person was.
I don't know. Earlier, I was hearing some talks about castrating men. So,
can I go first?
You should be happy about that.
Why should I be happy about it? I'm intersex.
Well, intersex moment. Congratulations.
I mean, like you could check my timeline right now that I call myself a man all the time.
I mean, yeah, slay. Do your thing. I don't. Yeah, I don't. As long as I don't think personally you've done anything to infringe on women's rights, especially if you're not calling yourself a woman.
See, that's kind of the point that I wanted to get onto though, because I've noticed quite a lot on like GC Twitter and like quote unquote TERF Twitter is that even for like the transsexuals who actually acknowledge that they're male, and even there are a lot of like gender non-conforming / feminine men who don't even identify as trans, they are still getting like harassment and like being called like a pervert and like an AGP and like a fetishist by women who are calling themselves GC. And it's like I would say that is I mean, you can't call it transphobia if it's not directed at a trans person, but I do think it's some kind of like bigotry and revulsion that people
Yeah.
have towards feminine / gender non-conforming males, which affects trans women, and it affects even men who are just not masculine. And I think that's the real thing that is happening. I do think that there is a dislike of non-masculine males, let's say, that often comes from the people who say that they're all for, like, you know, males being feminine. I'm not saying necessarily you, Femoid, but I'm just saying like in the wider like GC community.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well. I think that people can be extremely disgusting in that area, and I don't associate with a lot of. I mean, anyone who's like actively homophobic or shaming someone for, like, I don't know. There was a lot of like GC Twitter really hates Sam Smith. And I'm just like, this is just homophobia. Like, this is just fucking actual bigotry and gross. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with anyone like bullying someone because of the way that they present.
I mean, there are a lot of femboys who do acknowledge that they have autogynephilia. So
yeah, so Smith is one of them, and we're besties.
Well, Smith is awesome.
Yeah, I don't care about if you have autogynephilia, slay. I don't care. Don't call yourself a woman.
I posted about autogynephilia.
I posted
Why not
about
call
that on
myself a
Over
woman?
It.
Be who you are for your pride. Do your thing.
The rad femmes don't like to hear anything good about autogynephilia. Like, I posted about it on Over It because I want to reach rad femmes and say, like, look, you don't have to hate everybody with autogynephilia. There's a different way you can talk about this, you know. And they're just like, oh, you're a man, fuck you, get away.
I think the hatred and villainization of autogynephilia is also super weird. I don't agree with that. I think that if you're autogynephilic, embrace it and, you know, be who you are for your pride.
To be fair, Smith, it was my idea to tell you to post it Over It.
Yeah, it was.
Kara, do you want to?
Yeah, hi. I've been listening very quietly, and I have a few thoughts in regards to a few things that you guys have said. A while ago, you were talking about the female male brain, and I had some thoughts on that. There aren't sex brains, I don't think. I think there are certain areas of the brain that can be described as somewhat sexually dimorphic, in the sense that those particular areas of the brain show measurable differences on average between men and women that can be, on average, identified between the sexes. So with a certain level of accuracy, you can say this is more likely to be a woman based on these dimorphic things, right? But for the most part, the brains are the same. It's just in those particular areas there are measurable differences, and I think that's where people come from when they say those things. But I have to say, it really annoys me. With that being said, it really annoys me when a lot of trans people say, oh, it's been shown in studies that we have, even before hormones, we have brains that are more like females. My issue with that is those studies, and I may be incorrect, but as far as I'm aware from when I've looked this up myself, these studies are fundamentally flawed because they do not control for sexual orientation. And like someone said earlier, gay men have been shown for quite a long time in those sexually dimorphic areas to have brains that are more, as they are so called in the studies, female shifted, in the sense that they are more like that of the average female than they are of male. So the issue is when you have these studies on trans people, if you don't control for sexual orientation, so for example, I'm male and I'm attracted to men, that is a control in a study that needs to be accounted for, because if you don't control for that, how can you say it's gender or whatever rather than sexual orientation? So I kind of have frustration on both sides of the argument on that, because they're both kind of flawed in my opinion. But I don't really think it makes a difference anyway, like even if there were female and male brains. So I think it's a bit of a silly argument. So that was my opinion on that. And then the thing about transphobia, which is obviously, well, actually, does anyone want to kind of respond to what I said first before I carry on?
I'll just say that's based as fuck. That's basically what I was saying, but you said it better.
Oh, okay, cool.
I just wanted to say that if you're controlling for sexual orientation, like, no one has ever done that, because they would lump people that are bisexual in with people that are attracted to women.
That's not how
which
studies work, darling. They would control. They would exclude bisexual people for the sake of trying to control for sexual
Yeah,
orientation.
if anything, it might confirm HSTS versus AGP.
Well, I don't necessarily. Okay, let's not get into this. But I don't necessarily think that someone who's straight that has gender dysphoria has to be an AGP. I think you can.
Wait, do you also? I'm wondering, because I think that would have to, if you control for something like sexual orientation, that would have to mean that you can measure how homosexual someone is, especially with the existence.
No, it's not that you can measure how homosexual someone is. It's just that on average, it's been shown in the. I don't know if they've done it on females, but in homosexual male brains, those dimorphic areas are more similar to females than they are to males, which makes the whole argument defunct, saying that trans women have female brains, because then that means that all gay men, well, a large enough amount
All gay
of
men
gay
have
men,
female brains, and they're all
right, exactly, which makes it kind of
Yeah.
a defunct argument, which is why it's
well, maybe it's just certain places are more
erase
typically
gay
female.
people.
No, it's just that we can't. I can't really bother to explain why, Claire. But basically, if you don't control for sexual orientation, you can't conclude. You can't make the argument that the reason why these certain dimorphic areas of the brain are, quote, female shifted, as they say in the studies, is because of so-called gender identity. You can't say that because you haven't controlled for an element that has been shown that we know does influence those areas of the brain. So it makes that claim false, null, and void because you haven't controlled for it. This is how studies work, right? You need to control for things that we know affect certain variables. So that may be the case in people who, but we can't say that because the evidence just simply, it's bad. There are more people, more like, neuroscience people coming out and saying and pointing out the flaws in these studies that they didn't control. I don't know how they missed it because it's such an important thing, but they just completely did not control for sexual orientation, which is a big flaw. Anyway,
I agree. I just think that there's a big flaw with excluding people from the bisexual and the asexual category, or
when doing
lumping
studies, we're
them
not
in
talking
with
about
people that
excluding
are.
people. No,
No, I'm just saying
actually,
how
yes, we
it's
are.
historically been done.
Well, yes,
You
because
maybe
if it,
have them categorized separately, because you cannot measure like people that are straight versus people that are gay without also seeing, okay, what about people that are bisexual? Does that
I'm not saying that
lie
this is a
in
measurement
line
of
with what we're saying?
homosexuality, because like I said, the differences between male and female brains are small, but when we look at a large scale of people, like a big sample size, then when we zoom out, we can see in certain areas dimorphic differences. That means when we take a random brain without being given the sex, we can estimate with a certain level of accuracy. I can't say, but let's just say for the sake of argument, 65% accuracy, we could define whether it's a male or female. But 35% of the time it will be wrong, which means that heterosexual males may sometimes, just by the sake of biology, have female shifted brains. So I'm not saying that this is an argument that we can measure homosexuality, or because there are going to be some homosexuals that also don't have that female shifted. But when we take a large sample size, we can find a pattern, we can find an average that can indicate certain things, and it's interesting, and we could look into why that is. But it's not a you're gay so you have this, like it's not, that's not the argument I'm making, and that's not what that concludes, like those sorts of studies conclude. I think it was just a prevalent point, because I just get really annoyed when people say, oh, we have, even before hormones, it's been shown that trans women or people who identify as trans who are male have female brains or whatever. We don't. We may do, but there aren't really female brains anyway. It's just the studies that they use to make that claim are not very they're not very profound, in the sense that they don't control for something very important that has been shown to affect this particular area of the brain. But anyway, I wanted to talk about, if you don't mind, because I keep talking, about transphobia, which is obviously the topic. I believe transphobia is not misgendering. I don't think transphobia is being called a man when one identifies as a trans woman. I think transphobia is unjustified discrimination. And I pick those words carefully because I think there are circumstances where there is justified discrimination. So unjustified discrimination against people of any sex, male or female, who choose to look however they want, and even identify however they want, but they suffer unfair discrimination because of those personal autonomous choices of look or identity. So, for example, if I'm denied employment simply because they say you're a male and you look, excuse my language, but you're a puff, you look like a puff. I don't like the fact that you're a male who is choosing to look how you look. I'm not going to employ you. To me, that makes sense as transphobia. But saying that,
of course,
I call myself a woman, so if you call me he or whatever, then you are transphobic. I don't believe that's transphobic. That's how I see transphobia. Or people who inflict violence on trans people for the sole reason, and it has to be the sole reason, that they don't look or act like how they think society thinks we should look or act.
Sure.
That, I think, is transphobia, genuine transphobia, as in an aversion, a hatred, or whatever towards people who identify as trans. Whether you believe it's true or not, we can agree as a phenomena that it's a word that denotes a certain experience of some people. There are some people who have an aversion towards people in that situation. So whatever your belief of what is real and what's not, I think we can say that there are circumstances, it is overblown by a lot of people, by which transphobia is a real thing that people do experience. But I think it really devalues the real transphobia that people can experience by claiming that someone who disagrees with you simply is some sort of phobic. I have got more to say, but I'll shut up for a bit because I feel like I'm just rambling on.
No, I think I agree with everything that you said so far.
Okay,
and yeah, I probably think that we agree on probably all of it. I think that was pretty succinct. What would you say, brother? What would you say in relation to all the things that Kara has said? Is it Kara?
It's
Or
Kara.
Kara. Okay, Kara. Sorry.
I don't know. She said a lot. I think that the idea of like justified discrimination, I think that I would disagree with that. I don't really know if we're talking about categories that are protected legally, if there's ever like a justified discrimination. I don't really know if I can conceive of like a situation like that. I mean, if you give me like a really, like extreme example of like Jessica and Eve or like Karen White or something like that, like I think there's a little more wiggle room, but I wouldn't really consider that discrimination. I would consider that like appropriate categorizations of people in like prison environments. I wouldn't really consider that discrimination. I guess if we're talking about like justified discrimination, I'd want like an example of that.
What I meant by justified discrimination is kind of what you just said, I guess, in a sense that not all discrimination has to be negative or like a, I can't think of the word, sorry, but like a discrimination that is fueled by hatred or just unjustified, I guess. But justified discrimination, I would say, is a positive discrimination where it's necessary. So, for example, when we're saying for some reason that is important, males go over there, females go over there, you're discriminating the females from the left space and the males from the right space. That's not inherently a negative discrimination. It's just by definition, by use of the word discrimination.
Yeah, we do it with affirmative action. We do it with children and adults. We do it
doesn't have to be a negative thing, but when it comes to certain single sex spaces, female spaces such as prisons or female shelters or whatever, things that are segregated by sex, not every, but I think most things that are sex segregated, there is a very clear reason why, and I think it's a positive form of discrimination. It's a necessary, justified discrimination, and everything else that is discriminatory, I would say, is an unjustified discrimination, that's what I meant by that.
Sure, and I just think it would depend, because I would lean more on the side of like it would be on a case by case basis, because I can think of instances where if we're categorizing things based on sex only and sex alone, there are instances where you wouldn't want somebody who's like me, who's a female, who's like 6'2" and could kill all of you if I really wanted to. Like, you wouldn't want me in that.
You're a female now?
If you're categorizing
even
by
in
male
the span
and female,
of this conversation, you've changed back sexes.
If we're categorizing things by saying there's male and female, right? If we're saying like our assigned sex at birth, right?
I thought you were male.
If we're doing assigned sex at birth, is that's how you would want to do it? If I legally have my sex changed, do you think that I should be entitled to all male spaces, or do you think I would be categorized as female? I know that it's really funny that I can engage with like your world, but you can't engage with mine. Like, I'm telling you that the way that these would be categorized is by assigned sex, right? That's how they would do these.
You're comfortable with going into a male prison?
Yeah.
Slay. do your thing, I
Yeah,
guess.
so my question would be, is it like, if we're talking about designating spaces based on assigned sex at birth, which is what people are talking about, or like observed sex at birth, or whatever sex you're born as, right? If that's how we're like discriminating against these two things, like males over here and males over here and females over here, there's going to be room for us to say, like, on a case by case basis, this is appropriate and this isn't appropriate. And so I would agree that there is like that appropriate kind of discrimination if we were going to say, like, we're going to have like a women's only like boxing league, and then somebody who's a trans woman who's like 6'8" and like 300 pounds, it's like, oh, well, maybe you shouldn't compete in this boxing league. That would be like a just form of like discrimination, right? But I don't think you can set like a blanket rule for that, because I think it would be unfair to say that, like, because somebody who is a biological female who's like 6'2", has been on testosterone for like 20 years, could just like fucking demolish everybody in this wrestling league. We wouldn't want them competing just by virtue of them being assigned female at birth, or categorized female at birth, or being female at birth, however you want to say it. I think that it would have to be like more it would be more done on a case by case basis in this, and I think that that's like probably the best way to do it, because we end up with this really weird world where we have people that, for all intents and purposes, are perceived as men, live as men, that are aggressive, like might have dicks, might be like 6'2", like totally roided out, or whatever the fuck, however you want to describe some trans men, that these would be the people that would be in these spaces. And I think that would probably be significantly more uncomfortable than somebody like Blair White entering those spaces. And I'm not saying that every trans woman is Blair White. That's why I'm saying that it should be done on like a case by case basis. And I think that that would be appropriate. But just blanketly saying these are some spaces where only females are allowed, it's like, okay, well, I guess the females that you're going to have in this space are probably going to be people that you don't really want in here anyway, right?
I think the issue with
I'm
case by
just
case
gonna
basis.
say, like, I wouldn't assign a sex to you, but I would assign my ex to you. He's broke. Good luck.
I'm not gay, sorry.
I was gonna say real quick, I think the issue that with like these case by case bases are that, like, when we have states trying to like rule mandates for like sports leagues and things like that, like we normally try to aim for like the neutral versus like Ohio has a very distinct way in which each sports league, well, maybe sports leagues aren't the best way, because sports leagues can sort of set rules and say, okay, so like your estrogen must be like this way, you must be in like this sort of weight class. But then when we start like legislating for things like prisons and things like that, we have issues where it's like, okay, so like somebody's like now suddenly non-binary, or somebody's now suddenly like trans, but like, they're like a truck driver who like spent like 40 years driving around and like killing like children or something, and now they're like suddenly allowed in the female space. I don't know. I like the California idea of just creating a third space where it's just like really, really at-risk populations. I definitely think that like there should be something done to address the male prison rape going on, but like there should just be a third separate space, and that's where we all go and have fun. And then I don't know. Well, I don't really think anybody has fun in prison.
Yeah, and I think
if
that
you
like
do, you're weird.
I think that like a third space is probably a good option if there's like facilities to do it. But the problem is a lot of places don't have like the money or the time to do that. And something else that could be really helpful or really beneficial, or the way that it's mostly done now, is that if you're like pre-op and trans, you just go into like solitary confinement, and you aren't really allowed around anybody at all, right? So like even if there was a trans woman who was housed in like a quote unquote women's prison, it's not like she has like roommates and like bunkies and shit like that. She's literally just in the building where the other women are housed, but she's locked away, 99.9% of the time.
That's also inhumane.
It is. It
Don't they
is.
usually
I
have
agree
a
with you.
separate
I don't think
wing
that it's humane, but that's just like
rather
kind of
than?
the way that it is now. And I don't think that that's the way that it should be, obviously, but that's kind of how they do it now. So it's not like there's just, trans women running around in the women's prison, like raping people. They're usually kept away. And there are instances of that happening for sure. I don't disagree, but I'm saying that most of the time trans people are housed separately.
I want to hear what Kara has to say. She's going to have my hand up.
Other people had their hand up before me. I can wait.
All right.
Oh, Smith, white knighting Kara. Yeah, anyone can speak. Go ahead. Anyone can speak.
I'll go ahead if that's okay.
Yeah.
There's some really interesting points actually, and my concern in reference to the trans issue, and it's going to sound strange. I mean, I'm in my 30s now, and I came out at 16 when it wasn't all trendy and cool, and it might seem strange to say that, but it sort of got to that point, hasn't it? To some extent, it wasn't like it wasn't trendy and cool at the time, and it was difficult. And I'm from quite a small city in the north of England, and it was it was difficult. And now everything's suddenly become like, oh, you have to accept these things, and then the measure of things I don't know how to describe it, like seem to get a little bit more, expectation is higher each time. in what you're expected to accept, and then to just sort of like draft all of these communities, inverted commas, together, and that's what. So now I'm this thing which isn't me at all. I'm supposed to feel represented by that, and I'm slightly concerned about the concept of the trans thing. Like one of one of my best friends is trans. That's a stupid. I know, I recognize it's a stupid comment to make, but it's relevant because it was never a thing that it is now. I mean, my one of my aunties worked at B&Q. I don't know if you're familiar with that in the States or elsewhere. It's like a department store, and there was a trans person who I mean, she used the female toilets, and it was all understandable and all fine. And I don't know what's happened now, but it's this extra exposure that seems to have created this whole thing where it's what is transphobia? Like, it's not the same as like, oh well, you didn't say what I wanted you to say, as opposed to actually, beating people up for it. It's a metric. It's a measure of it, and everything sort of gets diluted when actual transphobia, where people are violent towards trans people, which is horrific, and that's actually important, and it's an important differentiation to make, rather than just to go, oh well, you didn't do what I wanted you to. And I think this is what the problem is. And I think you mentioned the AGP stuff earlier, which I thought was again quite interesting. Like, I don't think that if you've got AGP, that's fine. But if you've got AGP, you shouldn't really be in women's spaces. You just shouldn't. It's like it's your fixation, it's your fetish, basically. That's, not all people. Maybe it's not nobody's fault that that's the case, but you shouldn't really be in women's spaces, and neither should you want to be. And going on to what brother just mentioned just now, I understand like a case by case basis. In an ideal world, I think that would function quite well. But sadly, the reality of an ideal world isn't the case. We have to deal with what we've got, and there's something that's happening in the West currently, and it feels like a lack of gratitude for all of the progress that we've made, and the success that we've achieved in terms of making everyone feel like comfortable and welcome. It's like it's almost expected now, and that to me, that's a bit sort of, I don't know, it's just disappointing. And so if one man enters a woman's prison, not to say that you were supporting this, brother, I don't think that's the case, but what if one man enters a prison and as a woman, and autogynephile, as it were, and rapes another human being, like we need to just mitigate those. And I suppose sometimes it's a case of course, you need to value how people feel and make sure that you can accommodate that. But myself, at least, I don't want to live my life to make other people feel uncomfortable. And yet, but I know that not everyone's like that. Some people do want to do that, and it's a balance, I'm just like waffling slightly now. But what is transphobia is the question, and so I think transphobia is violently attacking somebody, or being deliberately evil to them based upon something that they can't help. And of course, it's not a choice to have gender dysphoria. It's just how you're born, you know?
Do you think that you could be like homophobic without beating the shit out of somebody who's gay, or do you think there's kind of a scale to those behaviors?
It's not a case of if you can. Of course you can. You can say nasty things to people. You can. Everyone's capable of that, and it just depends. I think one thing that for myself at least,
it's the difference between saying it's the difference between saying a trans woman is a male, a biological reality, versus saying you're disgusting and you should die.
yes, no, that's true. I was just about to just jump on that slightly. I've been hurt by words about my sexuality. I hid it for a long time, and every time the subject was raised when I was younger at school and stuff, like it would like create this feeling in me that I think you guys must understand it because you've probably felt it yourself, like shame, embarrassment, painful, definitely that, absolutely all of those things. Yeah, so yeah, that is transphobia, of course. Like if if you do that to somebody, it's just where is the line? I guess is the question. Where is the line for that? Because at some point, at least for myself, I had to realize like, well, wait a second, I'm just gonna just boss this shit out, I'm just gonna fucking do it anyway. Like, who gives a shit what you think? And you know something, with that, I grew, and like you get this personal sense of strength. And that's really important to me, and I value that very deeply. Not to say like bullying's bad, of course it is, but at some point you sort of go, ha, and you make yourself better from it. You grow, okay, and you just dismiss these knobheads who say these awful things to you, and that was my response to it, at least.
Well, yeah, my only contention would be is the idea that it has to be something that's violent, right? Like it doesn't necessarily have to be. You can like there's a scale to it, right? In the same way there's scale of all kinds of discrimination. Like it can be like, well, this old lady, she kind of stinks. I'm probably not going to let her rent my apartment. Versus like I fucking hate old people, and anybody over the age of 70 should be executed by the state. Like these are two totally different. It's like a scale, right? Like it doesn't have to be at one end to be considered like discrimination or phobia or an ism of sorts, right? In the same way that I would consider it like there's a scale to like somebody being like violently racist and then somebody being like kind of racist. Like these are going to be different things, but that doesn't mean that neither are racism, right? That there's just like variance in the way that we would describe these behaviors.
I think that this is so interesting. I think that most people, you would probably describe me as transphobic. I don't know. Like personally, I don't consider myself to be transphobic. I mean, a year ago, one of my best friends is a trans man, and he was on testosterone for a year, and I got him a cake. And I don't agree with the fact that he's a male or that he's really like changed into a male, but I know how happy it made him to be on testosterone. I know how happy it makes him to do all these things, and that's fine. I just like. And for that, I think that's dope, and I think that you should be able to do whatever you want, and I think that you should be celebratory with your friends about finding happiness and finding whatever. But I still like that doesn't change the fact that I don't think that he should be in a male prison if he goes to jail, and he's actually a man, and all these things. And I don't know if that like where do I stand? Am I transphobic and just like a really supportive transphobe? Like I don't know like where am
Well,
I?
it's like I said, it's kind of like a scale, right? And it's going to depend on like every individual. So like for me, like I don't give a shit. But for some people, they may consider it that way. Like it's always going to be a scale and it's always going to be subjective because you can have people that are literally say like, I think that all trans people should be forcibly detransitioned by the state. We should make this illegal and they should all die. And some people are like, oh, well, that's just their opinion,
crazy.
right?
Those people are crazy.
Well, sure, but there are also some people within that are just like, oh, well, I don't think that's transphobic. That's just like their opinion. So that's going to be subjective and there is a scale to it, right? And so I think that if we're talking about the concept of like tightly lipped, like being like, I can see that this makes you happy, but I don't really know about that. Like I would consider that to be like transphobic in the same way that I think that
it's not even tightly lipped. I just think if we're it's not even like I appreciate you finding your truth. Like you're happier now than you were then, and that's a slay. But like it's not even tightly lipped. Like you're not a woman. It's just like I just don't.
Well, it feels tightly lipped in the sense where like if you said like hypothetically, we'll say you come to me and you say, Malcolm, I actually I converted to Islam and I'm now a Muslim, and I'm like, oh, I'm so happy that you like found your truth. Like I think that like that's super wrong and like they're super homophobic and they hate women and you're gonna have like the worst time of your life, but like I'm glad that you're happy. Like that kind of gives like the air of like I have some kind of sentiment or resentment towards like Muslims or Islam, right? Like yeah, on the surface I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm so happy that you found like your faith or like your true calling and you're comfortable in that, but like underneath I'm like kind of holding it in where I'm like, oh my god, this is like the dumbest fucking thing you could have ever said to me, right? Like that's what I'm saying is there's kind of like a scale to it.
But then that sort of becomes like thought policing. Like I don't.
Well, the thing is it's not thought policing because you just said it. It's not a thought. It's not a statement, right? If you just kept that to yourself, obviously nobody can say anything about it. Nobody can judge you for it.
I'm not gonna say that to him if he's like, yeah, I'm super stoked. I'm not gonna be like, yeah, I don't know. Like my opinion doesn't become his problem. My opinion is like legislative. I'll vote on these things. I'll talk about these things outside of him. Like, I don't know why I'd bring that to him.
Well, sure, but again, because we're not just having it inside, it manifests in other ways. That's where I would say that it becomes kind of an issue, right? And it's not just thought policing when it's something that you believe in, something that you act on pragmatically, as far as like voting or the way that you would like talk about this in public spaces, the arguments that you make, the things that you believe, they like manifest.
Sure, but I wouldn't vote to where he couldn't transition into what he thinks is like a man. I would vote. I guess there's just different levels of like crazy. I guess I think that people who want to outlaw hormonal therapy for adults are fucking crazy. Like, I just think that that's absurd.
Yeah, for sure. And so the only argument that I'm making is that I think that there is a scale where people can look at that and still say, like, I think this is not transphobic. I think this is good. Like, it's just saying that these people can't access this medicine. I don't think that's transphobic at all.
I have diet transphobia is what you're saying.
Oh, no, I would consider you to be transphobic, but I completely agree that there's it's a spectrum, and it's going to be depending on, like, how I perceive it and how you perceive it, because there are TERFs who genuinely think that, like, trans people shouldn't be allowed to transition at all, but some people don't think that's crazy, right? It's going to be subjective, for sure.
Do you think there's utility on still calling it transphobia if it's not, like...
In the same way that I think there's still utility in saying, like, I don't know, I think Islam is really dumb as being, like, Islamophobic as somebody who's saying we should execute all Muslims. Like, they still fall under that umbrella, right?
I wouldn't call that Islamophobia.
Okay, well, we'll use a different example. What if somebody was like, oh my gosh, can I touch your hair, black person? I love black people hair. It smells so good. And then somebody who's like, we should kill all black people.
I don't think that's racist.
I think, yeah, those would both be considered racism. One is like kind of, the word that people use would be a microaggression, right? It's not like direct, adverse, violent racism, but it still falls under this umbrella of what we consider racism. I would consider it that way.
I would say that that's socially retarded. I would not say that that's racist.
I would consider that to be racist. I think there's a spectrum to all of these behaviors.
I don't know.
Do you think it's?
I don't know if I've ever heard a black
define
person
or perceive someone differently than they define or perceive themselves?
Sometimes I think it's gonna depend.
On a certain level, like if you're my friend, I'm not gonna be friends with you anymore.
Yeah, that's kind of just like my whole point is there's always going to be like a spectrum. There's like amplification factors. There's a lot that goes into what we would categorize as like discrimination or like transphobia or bigotry or whatever. Like there's clear cut examples where if somebody is like, I'm going to go outside and punch this trans person in the face because I fucking hate trans people, that like obviously we can look at that and be like, okay, that's transphobic. But there's like minutia and there's like subjectivity to a lot of the stuff and the way that people internalize it, the way that people have their thresholds of transphobia. Like the example I used earlier when people think that banning medical transition isn't transphobic, it's just going to depend on who you're talking to.
Maybe I'm just weird in that I think that like being mean to people on the internet and calling them like AGP or like troon or something is a lot different than like denying somebody housing, removing them from stores, passing legislation as like how they can and can't dress, things like that. Like I think that there's definitely certain prejudices that go into things, but I mean at this point, if we're going to say like, oh well, somebody like using like the word troon or somebody saying like, oh you're so AGP is a transphobic thing, then I mean how like half of trans Twitter would be immediately like thrown out. Like transphobia is I feel like the best way to explain transphobia would be if you're denying somebody the ability to go into a store, to have housing, to have a job, those types of passing legislation as like how they dress, passing legislation as like what medical treatment they can and can't get, calling for like violence against them, that's like a hard transphobia. But if you're just like somebody who's sitting there thinking like, well, I don't know if like all of this is real, or like I think that there might be like trenders or something like that, that seems more like it's just like a personal prejudice. And then there can be in-group prejudice too, but I mean like I feel like there's like it's a very tacit line, because at one point it's just shit talking on the internet, and then on the other line it's like people in Tennessee saying, well, if you're a woman in a suit, like you're going to get 90 days in jail.
Well, would it be homophobic if I screamed faggot at somebody while they were walking down the street?
Not if you were friends. And that's the understood.
No, complete stranger.
What did you call me?
And very gay.
I beg your pardon.
No, I mean
okay, I'm half faggot.
I think it depends.
Some of my best friends are faggots.
If your harassment extends to like real life and not just like shit talking on the internet where there's like this terminally online behavior, then like at that point I'd be willing to say that like there's a hard prejudice there that leans on transphobia. But if you're just like on the internet saying a bunch of like random shit to rile somebody up, that's not really transphobia.
Sure, in the same way that you can say like if you scream slurs at a woman on a video game, that's not misogynist. If you like just hold them to the same standards is what I'm saying.
I think that I don't know. I don't know, because that doesn't sound right.
Miss Biological Woman, do you think that screaming slurs towards women to make a sandwich or get back in the kitchen
wait, hold on,
the internet is misogynistic?
Well, I think that that's different because that's something that actually happens like everywhere. That's like that's like a system that's being like upheld. Which I guess is true with transphobia as well. I would never scream a slur at any trans person ever.
Well, not all people are as nice as you.
The internet without slurs is just not the internet.
I mean, I agree. I don't trust any trans person who doesn't say the T slur.
But yeah, I don't know. For some,
Brilliant.
I don't know why that seems different to me, but it does seem different to me.
That's just because you're transphobic. You're holding us to different standards, and that's actually a good
No,
segue. What
no,
is
I don't. I think it would
definition
be
of
easy.
transphobia?
I think it would be easy to say that, but I don't. I think that there's a logical reason.
My definition of transphobia is when you hold like either people or groups to different standards based on only because they are trans, not because of any biological reality, right?
Well,
And that doesn't mean
so
male or
that's
female. That
well,
means
that's
things
well,
like
yeah. I would never treat someone different because they were, I mean, male. I mean, I might make a couple jokes, but I would not like. I think I don't know. H said this like weeks ago, where most turfs aren't trans exclusionary; they're like male exclusionary, and I would probably identify as that. But I think there's a reason to be fucking scared of males. I think that there's I think that that is a useful discrimination to have as a woman.
See, so for me, it's like, okay, I think it's bad. I think it's transphobic to like you're literally scared of all males for their maleness, not attributes that come from their maleness. It's one thing to say they are male, they at one point in time they had a penis. At one
You
point in
are.
time they had
Well,
XY,
this is the
blah
distinction
blah
is that
blah.
I think that you are your body, and you think that there's like you
But
don't
my
think
body,
that.
I've changed my body quite a bit. I've lost quite a bit of muscle mass. I've lost quite a bit of bone density. Like, I acknowledge all of the biological realities, but I also need to acknowledge the
Yeah, well, I'm
biological
not
realities
scared
of
of
what I've
you.
medically changed.
Yeah, I'm not scared of you. I'm not scared of like transsexuals that are like, visibly. I mean, I think that there's a difference between certain types of transsexuals also. Like, I think, like,
You
making
just
the
said that you wouldn't
distinction
allow us
between
in
whether or not
prisons.
like someone passes. Like, I think that, if you're like Caitlyn Jenner, I'm gonna be a little more scared of you than if you're fucking like Blair White. Like, that's just like gonna be the fucking truth. I'm scared of Leah Thomas.
To be fair,
She
Caitlyn Jenner
comes
just had
into my
shit.
nightmare.
Leah Thomas is terrifying.
I'm terrified of women that have horrible plastic surgery too. I agree with that.
Yeah,
I'm terrified of most women.
Yeah, I'm not scared of like Dylan Mulvaney. Like, I'm not. But being able to
I
like
am.
self ID and just
I'm
call yourself
terrified
a
of
woman.
Dylan. You're not scared of Dylan. Dylan's terrifying.
She just has
I'm
really
not
Could you
scared
imagine,
of. I
right?
think
Could you
Dylan's
imagine going
sweet.
to
she just has
I
really
trying
think
to
good
go to
I
hair.
sleep
I
and
think
he's
Dylan's
in the
Erica would be
sweet.
stuck
corner?
in a
I'm
conversation
happy
with
for
her.
Dylan. I think
She's in
Dylan's
the corner.
sweet.
And it's like day 1055 of being a woman. He's in the corner of your room when you're trying to sleep. How
I
would that
think Dylan is like a trans Pee Wee Herman. It makes me a little uncomfortable. But I think Dylan's doing. I'm happy for Dylan. I think that the obsession with Dylan is fucking crazy. But yeah, I just think it fucking depends on like what you look like, which unfortunately like sucks. Like, it sucks because some people will never pass no matter what they fucking do, and that sucks. That's a horrible reality. But
I want
yeah,
to say
if
one more thing than let Kara go.
Yeah.
So like for me, something that would be transphobic would be like, okay, if you were assigned male at birth, you cannot be in a women's prison. But if you say, if your muscle mass is over this much, if you are capable of producing fertile sperm, if you have a penis, even that, I would say, you know what? Okay, I'll give you that one for now, at least. That, okay, if you have a penis, like, you need to be in a separate one. But there needs to be a reason behind each of these decisions. You can say, okay, a penis can be used for rape, but if I don't have a penis, I can't use it to rape. So you need to come up with another reason why to stop me.
Well,
if you
it's
say, because of
at that
muscle
point it would
mass
be
and bone
that point, yeah.
density, those have also changed. And there are cis women who have higher muscle mass and higher bone density than me. Not all cis women. Most cis women probably have a little bit less. But
well, that
if
makes a
you're
case.
going to
That
exclude
makes a
me,
case.
then I want you to exclude them too.
Okay, well, yeah, and that's ridiculous. So then that makes a case for like why we cannot do that. Because
Why
yeah,
can't
if
we
your
just
bone
say
density,
come up with these specific rules then?
because that's not, so how laws are made is that it's like generalities, right? So we can't do. I know I would love for everything to be case by case basis, but that's not how laws are made.
Well,
This
they can't
isn't
be
case
though
by
with
case.
discretionary
This
sentencing.
is
That's like a thing
something
for sure.
Yeah, and there's so many specific laws. We have like I mean, we create bodies just to create laws.
Yeah, prisons are
constantly.
already so underfunded that this shit is just not gonna fucking happen. Like,
You're
in a
advocating
perfect
for
world,
a third prison, but you think that we're not going to be able to come up with laws on how to do prison? I don't see where we're getting funding for one of them, but not the other.
I mean,
I think the
Okay,
reason
no,
why
no,
prisons are
I changed my
underfunded is
mind.
because,
I changed my mind. I don't
it's
want a
because
third
we're
space
like
now. I want a Hun
incarcerating
law.
too
I want
many
a law
people.
for Huns.
oh,
I want
No, that's what I'm sorry. I was just saying that's the reason why prisons are underfunded, because we're wasting too much taxpayers' money incarcerating non-violent, victimless criminals, male and female. Like why are people who are like drug addicted or prostituted or like theft like being put in, like given like punitive sentences? It should be rehabilitative justice.
yeah. I think if you have a vagina and you're like small and it's case by case basis, and I wouldn't have a problem with that person going into a woman's prison. But I also like just think that I just can't think of a law that would make it so that you could be like, and if you're tiny and little, and then also there are females who you would not put in a male fucking prison, who are bigger than you. That like doesn't make any fucking like that doesn't make sense. It just makes sense to say male and female.
You could do it on a
So
case
if
by
it's
case
like
basis.
2 years on hormones and you need to have vaginoplasty.
I think it would be more
but
productive to
then you
argue
enter the
for.
prison, and then we're turning women away who are muscular. We're like turning dykes away. Dykes go in male prisons now.
I think it'd be more productive to argue for like separate wings in prisons for like trans people. I will say that for the trans people,
They're not going to make a separate wing for the two trans prisoners in a state.
But then
Usually they
Claire, if there's hardly
Claire.
any trans people in prison, then why would you need to argue for trans women to be in women's
They should
prison?
just segregate based on violent and non-violent offense. If you have somebody who's like a rapist and a murderer, they shouldn't be in general population, period.
I agree with that, but I still think that non-violent male trans people should not be in the women's prison because it's still an infringement on like the boundaries of incarcerated women.
Well, sure, but like I said earlier, they're going to be segregated anyway. Like I understand that's not how we want it to be, but right now, like they're just going to be housed separately. Like they'll be in like the women's building, quote unquote, but they won't be around anybody, and that's how it is right now. So it doesn't really matter even if they go to a women's prison; they're just going to be in a separate.
I was just wondering, brother, quickly, like I was just wondering if it's the same over there as it is over here. But like, just because maybe you commit a crime in, I don't know, Manchester, you could end up in a prison in London. You know, but just because maybe two people per area might not necessarily be the same, the same area that you're from. You could end up somewhere else anyway. So if you can create like a prison that has that kind of wing, then I don't really see the issue there, to be honest. I think that kind of solves it all.
Well, because you'd have to extradite
right?
people to that prison, right? So if you got arrested in like Washington for like assault, like I don't know, so you get arrested for like having meth in Washington, but you're trans, and so you go to federal prison, and they're going to send you to the trans-friendly federal prison, and that's in like Indiana. That like fucks up everything, right? Like
Well,
nobody.
there's so many
federal
trans
prisoners
activists
to other
online. Why
federal
don't they
prisons,
cough up
like
some
all of
fucking
Yeah, and that's
change?
like a huge problem, though, right? Is like shuffling people around like that is really inhumane. One, because they don't have the ability to access like people in their community that are going to visit them when they get released. They don't really have a way to get back home. Like there's a lot of issues with shuffling prisoners around like that. So if we think that we're just going to ship people across the country to like the trans-only prison,
If that's the
right?
only option,
but I mean, we're already doing that already.
Yeah, I
so
think
it
that
makes
people should
sense
have
to just be like, here.
You should have the ability to just like sort yourself into isolation or segregation if you want to, right? Like if they say
I think that if the trans community has so much funding to legislate for like pronouns and all of these other
I'm like, cough up some fucking change.
With the U.S.
they
prison
can
system is not
absolutely
Bro, how much money is
put
being
that
spent on
funding
pronouns?
towards
Where are
like
you
third
coming up
I
with
don't
spaces
know
for
what it's
trans
like in the
people.
United
Like,
Kingdom.
there is a need
Prisons and
to
the jails are
have
not
like
underfunded in
tertiary
America.
spaces for trans people. There is.
They're not underfunded in.
We've been incredibly rude, by the way. Cara has been incredibly patient. I think Cara should speak.
Sorry, Cara.
Based.
You guys can carry on. I was going to bring it back to something you were talking about a while ago when I was quiet, so I don't want to like derail this. So if you guys want to carry on for a little bit longer, I'm cool.
Oh, I'm good. I feel bad. You were waiting. I feel bad.
Yeah, no, you're good.
No, okay. Well, like this was quite a while ago, maybe like 20, 30 minutes ago when you were talking. You were talking about gender, and well, before I continue, I'd like what how do you define gender, Femoid?
I define gender, well, how I want gender to be defined, or how I think it's currently defined.
Both, I guess.
How I'd like gender to be defined, how I think it ought to be, is masculine and feminine. But even then, that's sort of that's still assuming that some characteristics, like some things can be sexed or gendered, which I don't necessarily disagree, or which I don't necessarily agree with, and I don't think that there's a lot of beneficial, a lot of benefits to that. But now I'd say that gender is basically like essentialist, like innate. The way that I think gender is described is like an innate sex to a characteristic.
So you think that gender and sex is mostly synonymous?
I think that the way that people are using it, yes.
Okay, so okay. The reason why I say is because I think most of us would agree that the main difference between sex and gender seems to be that sex is obviously much more of a biological set in stone set of attributes compared to gender, whereas gender seems to be more of the, because I feel like this isn't something that I find so difficult, but I've been wondering what gender is for a while, because you come across different people, whether it's hardcore trans activists or feminists or a different kind of wave of feminist or radfem or GC or just the average person, and it varies from it's the same as sex, it's about the discrimination that primarily women have suffered historically, it comes to masculinity, femininity, etc., etc., and it confuses me, and what it seems to be mostly is the non-biological societal stereotypes and expectations that may be related to biological sex but are mostly detached. So, for example, the fact that women tend to have longer hair and men don't is not a biological phenomenon, it's a societal gender phenomenon, right?
Yes.
And as an example, I've never identified as a woman, not even a trans woman for that matter. As I'm still trying to work these things out, but I've never asked anyone to use she, her, he, him. Like I don't care. Like people do whatever they want, right? I'm very much like use whatever language you want. I really don't care.
Sure.
But I think it's interesting when we're talking about this specific conversation that despite me not quote unquote identifying as anything really, society, when I navigate the world, identifies me as a woman. And that kind of seems to give gender conceptualization that is like an external classification rather than an internal identity, which kind of goes against the trans argument and the opposite of the trans argument, because like the trans argument says that it's an identity. I'm a woman because I identify as a woman, but then I'm not identifying as anything, and the world is identifying me as a woman. And like, what am I supposed to do? Correct everyone and say, well, no, actually, I'm a man because I'm male. But that's only by the definition of gender that say it's synonymous with sex. So like, this is where I struggle with this, because for this very reason is why I've never called myself a woman. I don't even call myself a trans woman because I don't know if I'm any kind of woman. But then again, I know I'm male, undoubtedly, but when I go out and navigate with the world, people identify me as a male, which is why, yeah.
And I think that that's why gender is so harmful. And I think that it like obviously you're, if you're who you are in your profile picture, you're beautiful. You look like a female, and I think that in males' brains is like, okay, submissive, feminine. You're like you're seen as othered from this like male. Yeah, where am I going with this? Sorry, I just ate, so my brain, I'm on blood sugar mode. But yeah, I think that gender. Well, I think that gender was obviously created by gender was created, right? Gender is not innate. And gender, like the theology, was like created, and I think it was created to suggest that women liked being in the kitchen. To suggest that women liked being aggressed upon, that we were the more submissive sex against a dominant sex, and we liked it, and it was part of our intrinsic reality that we liked to be submissive, and we liked to do our nails, and we liked to do our hair. Those are just things that we like intrinsically. And so they based gender off of like they based a gender identity off of the way that women were pushed into this box for like centuries. And then they said, and they're just naturally like that. which we know now in a post-technological era that that's not true, right? Women can do anything except for, kill someone with their bare hands usually. But yeah, like women have the same interests on a plotting.
Have you seen Ronda Rousey?
Huh?
Can I just quickly
Ronda Rousey could
interject?
absolutely kill someone.
Yeah, but can I just interject on what you just said?
Yeah.
I'm sure I assume you're familiar with the I think it's Switzerland, right?
Yes.
Where what do you make of that situation where they really became kind of tried to be as much as they could post gender, and actually it went in the reverse direction from what everyone expected.
It was Sweden.
Sweden.
Yeah, it was the same thing. I think that they tried to be post-sex also, and I think that that's where you kind of lose. That's where you kind of lose people, because saying that, and I think that that's like the third wave feminists, like women and men are exactly the same, is sort of like losing it. Because we're not exactly the same, and it's because our bodies are different, and that's the only distinction, is that our bodies are different, but our minds are really similar, and and obviously I think that there's a biological reality in which, like, women obviously are the ones who carry the child, right? So it would make sense that biologically we would have evolved to take care of. I mean, we can take care of a child with our bodies. It would make sure that maybe our brains or our biology would also assume that we would take like the more nurturing role, I think. Generally speaking, but I still believe that like a man can also do that, and I think that that's but yeah, I think that we probably have a propensity for certain biological behaviors through evolution, and I think that through that, if you read anything about that like Sweden experiment or anything, it was like genderless, hyper, and it was like sort of like it was like socialist, everyone wearing gray, like there was no individuality, which I think is also a problem. I think that we should acknowledge our biological differences, and also acknowledge that we are all like hyper individualistic when it comes to like traits that we like, things that we like, interests that we like, and they just like lost that. And I think that that's ultimately why they started to do the whole like tribalism thing again, where they wanted to do like tradcon, whatever. Because I think we do need, as humans, probably a little structure. And also, I mean, there's a bunch of things going on over there that would also like it's hard to control that sort of thing. Especially in the scope of like being a pretty wealthy society also, like there's not as much like wealth distribution, and where like you would need, you know what I mean, like everyone's doing pretty okay over there, whereas like here people are still like starving to death in the street, so things are going to be
and they made ABBA, which is always good.
I think that's a very fair point, points, but at the same time you would still imagine that even given all of those variables, that given less constraints to be able to freely do things that in the West we consider much more of a masculine type of career choice, etc., that you wouldn't expect it to go in that direction so extremely. And because yes, we know that on average males are stronger and more physically capable than women on average, right? We all know this. So, but if we're not that different, you would think that there would be much more women in physical labor, and I think this is where it all kind of falls apart, I guess, because there are studies that repeatedly demonstrate that men are more interested in things, women are more interested in people.
But I also this is why I'm curious about the control of the situation, because you can't breed generations of humans in captivity to where their parents do not like, you can live in a genderless society, but still there's like, we treat men and women differently, and it trickles down, right? So from the very beginning of being
different,
huh?
Can it ever be different? We'll always treat people different.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that there's sort of like a resurgence of, I think, I mean, it already has been different. It's already become different from the fucking 50s. I see no way it could become any different. I think that we're moving towards like the right way. But yeah, I have a hard time that these people, like these mothers, weren't like, there's like this internal panic as a woman as you grow up, where you're like, I need to find a husband, like I need to find the person who's going to take care of me. I'm thinking about my wedding day at 6. I'm playing house, and I'm the mom, and I'm cooking for my children at 7. Like I don't know how you could control for socialization to not trickle down in something like that, unless you literally breed humans in captivity to see it, right? So I just don't necessarily think that there was like, yes, you can say that everything is genderless and there's like no like real distinction in society, but I just don't think that you can. I just don't think the control's there. I don't know how you could do that.
Mm-hmm.
So
No,
then
but
all
you're
these
right.
people are like, what the fuck do we do? Because now I still have this anxiety to find a husband, and I still have this anxiety to provide as a man. And then there's like nowhere to put it because everyone's telling you to be genderless.
But I
It
think
doesn't
a
make a lot of
certain
sense.
amount of that is natural, and I would probably even extend that to saying part of that is healthy biologically, in the sense
Sure.
that most of us are heterosexual.
Mhm.
Most of us have that biological desire to procreate, and biologically, obviously, the women, especially in the first 2 years of infancy of having a child, need to be that more mature. Sorry, nurture. What's the word I'm looking for? Nurturing. Sorry,
Yeah.
nurturing role. Compared to the man, obviously that doesn't mean he can't be, but you know what I'm saying, on average.
Yeah, certainly.
Whereas the man, obviously, in that situation, especially those first 2 years, the woman's probably going to be at home looking after the child. And is this a completely, can we ever be post gender? But then again, is that even gender? Isn't that post sex? I really
yeah,
don't know.
I think that would be post sex in that. I don't think that's necessarily gender.
Anyway, I'll shut up for a bit, but I did once I'm ready to speak again, I've got what I think is quite an interesting like thought experiment when it comes to sex, specifically about changing sex, and I think it's quite unpopular, but we'll come back to that.
Yeah, and does anyone have anything to?
Well, now I want to know what you're going to say. To be
Yeah,
honest,
yeah, no,
I'll
you
raise
cheated
my
out.
hand again. So you can't tease this way. So you're going to have to finish that one.
No, but if anyone has anything to say in response to the things I've just said, then it makes more sense to go off now, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can cap it. Like, I agree with you. I think that they are. I think we lose a lot when we say that. I think that sex is one of the only things that matter, and also it doesn't matter at all, and that doesn't make a lot of sense to most people hearing it. But yeah, I think that there are certain biological evolutionary behaviors, right? Like there has to be. Like we're
Well,
the only animals that think that we're gods, right? Like we think we're above it.
Yeah, I want to continue. I would definitely say that I've got some sort of contribution to that, to be honest. And it is a case like I don't understand why we have to fight the nature. Why can't we just run with it? So I don't think it's necessarily terrible, because you said something interesting earlier, Cara, and it was about the the homosexuals. Like, men are interested in things, and women are interested in people. Now, I would probably say I'm more interested in people than I am things. Things are just slightly relevant, but maybe that's because I'm a homosexual. Maybe that's part of the whole programming, I guess. But then I also do have the protected side, so I do feel protective. Like I want to protect the people I love, and that's sort of, it's almost instinctual. And I think sometimes it's a case of being able to figure out that stuff without fighting against it. And it
Yeah,
feels at
and
the moment.
that's not on a binary either. I know plenty of gay men who are just the most hyper masculine men fucking ever. And yeah, I just don't think that any of these traits are on a binary. I think that they plot completely normal distribution throughout like any sort of bell curve of any sort of people.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me because it feels so natural, and it's just a shame society currently. The whole sex and gender thing is interesting. Like I think that they're one and the same. Whether people want to say they are or not, maybe that's their distinction. But for myself, at least, I view them as one and the same. Sex is gender; they're the same thing, and they're just a different phrasing. And of course, you can dress this way or you can do that, which is a very different thing to gender dysphoria, I guess. But it's weird for me because I look at it now. It's like, why are we trying to force society to move in a direction? Which is, Sweden was really interesting from that example that you mentioned. That you try to, you put all these social programs in place, or you promote this idea of women in STEM, which I think is brilliant. You've got Marie Curie. All this stuff is always possible, but why not defy stereotypes? Why does it have to be forced on that? Like, it's to try to make people do things that maybe is against the nature. That's something that I always struggle with. Like, why are you trying to like promote something rather than just allowing it to happen organically. And you get these incredibly impressive figures who rise up and go, well, no, I'll defy this myself as an individual, rather than society told me to do this now, so I'm doing this now, you know.
Yeah. I think one thing that is, and I think this really blurs, especially at least in my mind, sorry, blurs the line between gender and sex, is that like certain things that we a moment ago described as primarily or entirely biological aspects, such as a woman's proclivity to being more nurturing compared on average to a male. Obviously, there are obviously exceptions to all rules. There could just be a completely heterosexual, non-transgender male who just typically, who just happens to be more like that. And one thing that and this is completely anecdotal, so there's no evidence of this or whatever, but since being on hormones, I've been on hormones for years now, I feel in my mind that certain things, the way I perceive things and my emotions in regards to certain things has changed, and it makes me think that parts of these aspects biologically, because obviously I think it's probably estrogen affecting, activating different areas of the brain that were less active before, etc., where I don't want a kid now, but I'd never wanted a kid before, whereas I see myself being in a situation of raising a child now, like nurturing a baby through and guiding an infant through to development, and I find that a beautiful thing, and I never felt like that before, and just the way I can react to just certain I don't know, videos or whatever, and that wasn't there before, and that makes me think, well, that is almost kind of inflicted in a way, because I wasn't so much like that before. I was in a way, but not to this intensity, and that it is a biological process, because obviously the estrogen is exogenous, but it is still having a biological effect on me.
Do you think that could also be age though? Because my fiance, who's a man, did not want kids.
Absolutely.
And, all of his, he ages, and then he's like, I actually do want kids.
Absolutely, but also at the same time, the things that part of my brain desires seems to be much more stereotypically in what the female would be providing for that child. So I'm talking about those first 2 years where you are the
sole caregiver, like breastfeeding, waking up at night, and sure,
just holding and just letting this little human grow under your guide, and it's a beautiful thing that, like, I don't know, but it could just be aging, but it was just so intensely from when I started hormones, and I am only 23, so I'm not like, much older.
I thought you were like 40 or something. Goodness me, you've got plenty of time.
Yeah, no, I'm
well,
not
except you don't have a womb, which is a problem, probably.
No, yeah, absolutely. But,
your biological clock is not good.
And Lawrence actually had a really good passage about transsexual women who like desire children and things like that. I really think that Anne Lawrence and I really think that the community does Blanchard really dirty. But I also think that in terms of like whenever we were talking about like, oh, so like men normally are like extremely dominative, and like women really want to know the person. They don't want to just have like the random sex. Like, it's very interesting because like I know one person who is like I'm somebody who wants to know the person and I want to feel secure, but I know somebody else who like really wants to know the person but wants to feel dominated. And strangely out of the two of us, only one of us has worn a skirt, and that's Math.
I think I think the thing is that when it comes to things like this, it's completely on a spectrum of averages. So the average male wouldn't tend to be like that, but averages work in the sense that means that there are a number that don't feel like that, and that can we necessarily say that's because of any sort of gender dysphoria or trans identity, however one wants to define it. Can we say it's because of that, or just a natural spectrum of how people can just naturally feel about these things? I'm sure there's plenty of men that also aren't trans identifying, that are completely quote unquote normal, who also fall into that sort of mindset. So can we say definitively? it's anything to do with this.
I don't know.
I had one thing I wanted to ask Cara one thing, or say something, then ask her something else. So on the topic of nurturing and maybe some women are more inclined to be nurturing because they've carried a child for 9 months and whatnot. I think with emotional attachment in general, I think it's kind of similar to taking a photo and it being in your camera roll for months, for example. And now, you know, compared to deleting it immediately, now it's been here for months and you have some sort of connection to it, even though, let's say, you don't need it. So I think there might be a biological aspect with women being more nurturing to a child, but I do think there is also another aspect where it's socialization, where women or females are socialized to be nurturers and caretakers. So a question I wanted to ask you was, since your transition, I know now you said that you're more nurturing, or you're more inclined to be like a caretaker in some sense when you see certain children. So my question to you is, would you say that could also be socialization now that you do, I guess that the world sees you as a woman?
Well, like I just said a moment ago, we can't know for sure whether these things are even connected. I just want to preface by saying I was nurturing before. It just, the intensity of it has increased dramatically since hormonal treatment. It's more of a, rather than a, oh, that would maybe be nice one day, I could see myself raising a child. Now it's like a, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes I'll have this, it feels innate drive to be like, I need to have a tiny little baby and I need to devote my whole life to it and make sure it grows up healthy and happy and it's a good person and it's fed and it's I don't really know why. I was nurturing before, but I didn't have these intense sporadic feelings before than I do now, which makes me think that it is probably biological, because women, females, have estrogen, higher levels of estrogen, and it probably affects different areas of the brain. That mine has been basically had that effect as well in a way.
Are you also taking progesterone?
No, not
Good.
currently.
That's
No.
good. I think that's pretty dangerous, isn't it?
No.
No, it's awesome.
It's just hun science. It doesn't really
It
have
makes
like
your
a
tits
proof.
huge too.
Well, I think that even combination estrogen and progesterone for women ups your rate of like stroke and blood clot by like an exponential amount.
Oh, that's usually because they use a non-bioidentical estrogen. It's not usually the progesterone. You usually need progesterone in or at least a progestogen in birth control because of the lining of the uterus. It needs to be, yeah. So and obviously we don't have that, so it's for other things. But I think it's actually necessary in birth control. But I believe it's the non-bioidentical estrogen that, which is silly because you can kind of mostly get away from all of those negative side effects just by using bioidentical estrogen, which is really silly. I think it's just money. It's cheaper to make. Anyway, about the sex thing, I want to preface this like 10 times by saying the things I'm going to say aren't necessarily what I believe. I think it's an interesting thought experiment of which I would like your guys' opinions. Please keep that in mind.
Oh no!
I believe these.
You're going to say something
yeah,
crazy.
that means it's going to be bad. That means it's going to be bad.
Start recording.
Buckle up.
Well, the idea of sex, especially in comparison to gender, right, is much more concrete. But at the same time, sex isn't just chromosomal essentialism. If we based sex just on chromosomes, then obviously I hate to use the example like a lot of trans, like hardcore activists use of intersex people, but it does make a certain point in the sense that if we base these things just off chromosomes or just off gonads, then people who we medically, for all other reasons, would define as male or female, wouldn't be, because we say, well, chromosomes hold so much weight in comparison to all these other attributes, therefore they are male, even though everything else says that they're female. So the best definition I've came across of sex, and I'm still thinking these things through, but is that it's not just chromosomes, or it's not just your gonads. It's best described as a culmination of the physical characteristics all of equal weight. None is more important than the other. Like chromosomes isn't more important than gonads, and gonads isn't more important than this, than that, blah blah blah. And when they're totaled all together, all of those sexual attributes, biological attributes, it's whichever average between male and female you are most similar to. So these attributes, you know, gametes such as small ova or large sperm, phenotypical characteristics or like secondary sexual characteristics such as breasts or lack thereof, wide hips or narrow hips, chromosomes, etc. I haven't got it all off the top of my head, but those elements of sex, they're all, in my opinion, as important as each other when we're determining what someone's sex is. I don't think any one of them holds more weight. I think it's when you total all of those things together, which one you are most similar to. And where the controversial thing I think comes up is that, again, I'm not saying I agree with this, but I think there may be an argument to be made that upon undergoing hormone treatment, one may be able to argue that one's sex shifts in a way from one to being totally overall, cumulatively, more like the other than the original. Even though, but then it may be more. It may be better to say that it's actually some sort of self-inflicted intersex state instead. I'm not sure.
That's what I've always said, is that I think that you are actively making yourself intersex. And I think that it's easy because we're humans to think that we don't have to define ourselves in any like animalistic mammalian structure. But in every other organism living in the world, it is based off of whether or not you hold the larger or the smaller gamete. Because we think we're gods, we describe it differently because we have personalities and we're autonomous and all these things. And I guess
when it becomes difficult though, because that's why I said if we hold much more higher weight to gametes, then what about the females that don't have ovaries and have testes, or the reverse?
Well, sure, intersex people will exist, and intersex people exist even in other parts of the animal kingdom. And whether or not, and still intersex, you are still primarily usually male or female, even if you are intersex. You're usually not. It is very, very, very rare that you are exactly between the two.
Yes,
like that doesn't happen. And the reason
that's
why,
exactly my point. If you are a female who has no ovaries but has testes and may have the developmental pathway and the potential to create large gametes, but every other sexual characteristic is, apart from chromosomes, obviously you'd need an SRY for that, but everything else was female, and they've been socially developed as female, they look like a female, they interact with the world as a female, and all the other sexual characteristics are female. If we hold more weight on gametes and whether they produce large or small gametes all have the capability to, then that's when it becomes really mucky, because then it's like, well, then we would say that's a male.
Sure. Well, I don't think we have to call those people male or female. I think that we can literally just call them intersex.
Right.
I mean, okay.
I think that sex is defined as the sexual through sexual viability and sexual function.
True.
So I think it's actually possible that you could have theoretically, I don't know if actually possible, but theoretically possible that you could have complete function as a female and a male sexually, like reproductively. And in that case, I would say the person actually is kind of like both sexes.
Yeah, I just say that those people are intersex and they don't have to be male or female.
Well,
they're just an aberration.
I'm going by the bimodal definition, and I would say that person not only are I wouldn't actually define that person that can fully function both ways as intersex. I would say they're both sexes.
True. I would also say that.
And I agree with Cara that sex is a culmination of things, which is why I never understand the argument that what if a woman can't produce? But the thing is that there's multiple indicators. Just because you have one specifically or don't have the other doesn't necessarily define whether or not you are female or male. And
exactly.
I think with a lot of these exceptions where, what if a person has this or a person has that, that's a very small population, and intersex people do exist. But the main people that we are talking about tend to have male appendages or XY chromosomes, and they basically have everything male. But then I think their argument tends to be for intersex, and I don't think anyone's trying to invalidate intersex people.
Yeah,
I think we're talking about
yeah,
a completely different group that have, you know, they have XY chromosomes, they have, you know, semen or male appendages, like everything else about them is male. So I don't know why we, you know, jump to the what ifs, or what about people with PCOS who grow facial hair? I mean, although that's ovarian related, but
The
I
only
think.
reason sorry, carry on.
Go ahead. No, I'm done.
The only reason I brought up this, like I said, I kind of consider it a thought experiment, is because when some people make the claim that they have or they are in some way changing their sex, I mostly disagree with it. But I think it's interesting to think about, what if there is an example of a male like me who has hormonally changed their primary sex hormone, has reconstructed their genitalia to look in a way that looks similar, has a morphology and a phenotype that is more in line with a female, can't produce sperm anymore, basically mostly everything but the chromosomes. At what point, and this is kind of like what I believe, I think they've gone, oh no, I think it's Brother talking about the ship analogy, is that at what point do we say, again, I don't agree with this, but in that instance of a male trans person, like, is sex so immutable? I believe it is, but it's an interesting argument, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
Am I okay to tie a couple of points together? Just a second. A couple of points together, especially with what Cara mentioned earlier, just now. It's like in terms of parenting and like what that means to you guys, because the whole gender dysphoria thing, I think it's like, it's upsetting, really. Like, I can relate to it on an empathetic level. I don't understand it because I don't have it. But one thing I do wonder in terms of parenting, like about, so I've some sort of situation with same-sex parenting, and I always think you need the mother and you need the father, and it's not about the father and the mother needing each other. It's about the child needing the father and the mother to understand where they're from. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Well, I think well, I think the feminist argument or the misinterest argument, I should say, is that you need a mother and father because the father does fucking nothing.
Well, that's slightly misandrist. So thank you very much.
Yeah,
Yeah. But
yeah.
the thing is deeply right. The thing is, I really would love. I would love a little sprog. I would love a little one of me, to put my imprint on the world. That when I pass away, they're going to be around. I'd love that, but at the same time, it would not be with a same-sex partner. It would have to. Their mother would have to be involved, at least for me. That would have to be the case. So the biological reality of the situation is that
That's really
you
interesting.
need but you need a man and you need a woman. They need to be, together. But the child needs to have a sense of identity. And then the interesting thing about this whole topic is identity, is transphobia. That's a sense of identity. To be trans is a part of you and who you are. So to deny that from your child is I don't think that's the correct approach. At least from my limited perspective. I
Can
don't know
I
if that
quickly
makes any sense.
reply before Sleepy goes ahead, if you don't mind, Sleepy?
Go for it.
Thank you. Do you think it's possible, and I'm going to use a generalization here, and generalizations are dangerous, so obviously there are exceptions to this, but when it comes to same-sex couples, it does seem to be a phenomena that generally there does seem to be, the old bloody saying, which one's the woman or which one's the man, and there is some reasoning behind that makes sense, even though it is completely the wrong terminology to use. Do you think, what we were describing a while ago, in that on average, for biological reasons, females tend to be, well, let's say that they have those areas of their brain that makes them more nurturing, or more inclined to be to have that drive to nurture a child, right?
I don't know. I think the way that men have this, because I can only speak for myself. Of course, I can try to speak for men in general, but I think it's a case of like, I've got this. I do have. It's more of a protective element, and I do have a certain desire to to have another me, I suppose, which is a bit narcissistic, I guess. But it's like there is that there. There is that kind of desire to sort of like extend yourself onto into the world.
Yeah, but
I
say
think
you
that.
were just like a typical female, right? In the sense that, say you were same-sex attracted, you're a lesbian, and you are, apart from your appearance, the same in every other way, in the way that you think and the way that you feel. If you were in a lesbian relationship with a woman that was much more the opposite, which doesn't always, but happens to be the case quite frequently, what if, like, I'm saying, I think it's possible that it could work, that although there isn't necessarily a father in that instance, you could probably fill that role, perhaps not exactly as I can't figure the word, like as great as could be, because there isn't an actual father there, but given the roles and the dynamic, I can see how it could be possible that those things could just fall into place, especially in couples who do tend to take those opposite kind of roles.
Well, I guess my take on that. I'm thinking from the child's perspective because again, this is I think a conversation about identity. The whole room is set up around it, transphobia. To be trans is an identity that you have, and I'm thinking like, well, what about the kid? What about the kid that you make? What about how do they feel? They want to know where they're from. They want to know all of those things. I mean, you've seen ancestry.com, all those sorts of things like, oh, this is my history, and they need to. I think they need to have a solid grasp on their own identity. I mean, because a lot of people have children for selfish reasons, and something that can turn into great things. Just because you do something in a selfish manner doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a selfish, entirely selfish.
I don't
But
think you're
like,
wrong, but at the same
you know,
time, I think that's more when we're talking about the child becoming older and becoming a teenager and wanting to know their roots. And I agree with you that I think that's natural for people to wonder. But I think when we're talking about early childhood and the roles, I think that is mostly unrelated, because I think single sex couples are much more, in my opinion, desirable than single parents.
well, I wouldn't say more. I would say just different. I guess it would be the answer. But if I was to have a kid, and I would be very honest, I would like it potentially that chance. I mean, I've got my niece and my nephew, and I'm very grateful for them. But like, it would be different. It would be like an extension, and someone to mold, but like, not in a way, just for them to be a person. And I guess like my translation onto it is the potential situation is like I would want to know how they feel, and if to make the world the way the way they want it. I don't know if I'm explaining myself very well, but that's my take, I guess.
I think it's a good take.
Say again, sorry.
Well, personally, I
I
have
think
the desire to not ever have children and spend hundreds of pounds on myself and ship all the kids into the deepest, darkest
I
pits
wouldn't
of
expect any less, Holly.
Timbuktu.
I wouldn't expect
Ship
any
them
less,
all off
Holly.
to Timbuktu, darling. Boarding
yeah,
school.
I think that that's an equally great idea. So yeah, I think that we've been here for a while. We've talked forever. I want to build a house in Minecraft, so I think I'm gonna end it because that's way more important to me than trans issues.
Oh wait, I
That
feel
was a
really bad
joke.
because I interrupted Sleepy and I didn't let her go.
Oh no, Sleepy, did you want to wrap it up?
Oh yeah, I was just going to say that. So like when it comes to comparing like trans people to intersex people, like so I have a condition. I was born with something called a Y deletion, which means that I had testicles that were essentially like undescended, like pseudo ovaries, but they were still testicles. They still would have made sperm if they were like properly developed. And like obviously that led to like a lot of weird developments, like growing up and especially like in my teenage years and like going through foster care. That was like a like typical hell of its own. And I can kind of see where you're coming from, but like the major thing that like super like bugs me is like when a lot of like because the transgender community does this so much, is where they'll be like, oh well, there's this condition or that condition, or there's this when it comes to like you could be like you could be a biological female and you could have like an XY, and then they'll point to like that Polish like Olympic medal winner from like the 70s or something. And like honestly, I feel like we have like sort of overlapping struggles, and while I am like trying to be perceived like socially as like more female, it's just, I don't know, like being intersex is like a crusade in and of its own right, and I don't think that it's like anywhere near like as, because like as a child, like when you're born and you have like, and you like find out like, oh, like a doctor's like remade like everything down there for you, so like you like have that fucking up in your head like as you're growing up and like sort of getting like tits and stuff like that in puberty, and you feel like you have nowhere to belong. Then you sort of like see like Omega like fridge motor huns like just like trying to adopt like the same rhetoric of like, well, there are certain people that like all of these things are like so super bimodal. Like it's super super annoying, and it's super super aggravating, because like I've now basically had a doctor like fuck with my genitals like twice because of this, so it's annoying as hell.
I just want to say on behalf of, I don't really feel part of the community because they all ostracize me because of my views.
It's okay. They hate me
on
too.
Behalf,
so.
On behalf of the trans community, I want to like apologize for the fact that we use intersex as like a pawn to explain an ideological narrative that people want to push, and it's oftentimes very misrepresented, and I can imagine it's very frustrating as someone who, because intersex isn't just this like magical like, oh my god, they're between sexes. No, often there's very serious medical issues that they have to go through, and it's not this unicorn of an experience. And I feel bad that the fact, and I feel bad the fact that I used it as an example earlier.
No,
But
I don't think feeling
Yeah,
valid
no,
is
like
right after.
like your example was like the closest that made sense, versus like
Hmm.
somebody who's like in like the transgender community, and they'll be like, well, like look, like, you know, there's like there's like this huge bimodal spectrum of sex of, like biologically, and it's like, well, no,
Right.
like far and wide, like even like Klinefelter's, which is in like 1 in 500 men, like that's still like such an outlier disease.
Yeah.
And then when you get to things like me, where it's like Y deletion, it's like people used, like when I first like started being like posting photos of my face and stuff, I used to be like, oh well, like you already have passing privilege, blah 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 blah, and like I'd get like super explained to it, and it's like, yeah, but like at the cost of like having like, I get like
Right.
woken up in the middle of the night because I have like racing tachycardia, and
Yeah.
like I like can't control like how much I sweat, and I get like super nervous and like
People just see
very
what they want to
fidgety.
be, and they go, "Oh, I'm jealous of this, of your
Yeah,
look."
I'm
And
jealous of your external appearance. I want to wear your
yeah,
skin, and it's like, well, that's
at what
creepy
cost?
and weird.
At what cost? Yeah. Anyway, but
Well,
sorry, on behalf of the
I just
people
want to
that
say,
do.
deeply thank you very much, and it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you guys. Absolute pleasure.
It has, and me and Cara are gonna host like a space if anyone wants to like come after Deeply and stuff.
Incredible. Yeah, go there if you keep if you want to keep listening. God, I'm sorry, I'm just retarded right now. I don't know what's going on. Spent
Yeah, thank
most
you
of
for
my
being here.
emotional energy this morning. Sorry. But yeah, thanks so much for listening in, and I want to do this weekly. I've been doing it weekly, so follow me if you want to be noticed for next week. And I appreciate all of the trans people who come on and talk to me. I know that it's nerve wracking and also just sort of uncomfortable to talk to someone who has opposing views. And yeah, I appreciate that, and I appreciate everyone who's been respectful. And remember to
Well, folks, it looks like that's the end of another riveting live stream. See you on the next one.